The question that shattered Logan Pierce's carefully built world didn't come from a bank, a lawyer, or even fate itself. It came from a woman in a $10,000 dress standing in his oil-stained garage at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, asking him to pretend to be something he'd never been. One weekend, one lie, one chance to save everything he'd worked for, or lose himself completely. What happened next would test every belief he had about love, family, and whether two people from impossible worlds could ever truly meet in the middle. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The fluorescent lights of Pierce Auto Repair flickered their usual rhythm. 2 seconds on, half-second dim, back to full brightness. A pattern Logan had learned to ignore 3 years ago when replacing them stopped being a priority. Priorities had shifted the day he became a single father. Now at 9:17 p.m. on a Saturday in late October, those lights hummed above him while he wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days, mentally calculating whether he could push the Henderson transmission job to Monday without losing the customer. The garage sat on the forgotten edge of Riverside, that part of town where ambition came to make modest livings and raise families away from the chaos of the city center. Not poor, not rich, just real. The kind of place where people knew your name and your story, whether you wanted them to or not. Logan's story was simple. 32 years old, widowed young, raising a 7-year-old daughter named Sophie in the apartment above the garage, fixing cars to keep the lights on and food on the table. No drama, no complexity, just the steady rhythm of work, school pickups, bedtime stories, and the occasional moment of wondering if this was all there was. He didn't hate his life. That was important to acknowledge. Some men in his position grew bitter, resentful of the hand they'd been dealt. Logan had passed through that phase in the first year after Emily's death. The anger, the why us, the crushing weight of single parenthood thrust upon him without warning. But Sophie's laugh had pulled him through. Her resilience had shamed his self-pity into submission. Now, he simply existed in the space between contentment and yearning, never quite settling into either. The rain had started an hour ago, that particular autumn rain that smelled like wet leaves and approaching winter. It drummed against the metal roof in an irregular percussion that almost masked the sound of the door opening. Logan glanced up, already forming his standard closing time apology. "Sorry, we're just finishing up, but if you want to leave your keys, I can take a look first thing Monday," when the words died in his throat. The woman standing in his doorway didn't belong in his world. That was his first coherent thought, followed immediately by a cascade of observations his mechanic's mind cataloged automatically. Designer coat, probably cashmere, raindrops beating on fabric that cost more than his monthly revenue. Heels that had no business navigating his oil-spotted concrete floor, dark hair swept back in a style that suggested a professional had been involved, and a face that managed to look both flawless and exhausted in the harsh fluorescent light. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, assessment maybe, or calculation. The kind of look people gave expensive purchases before committing. Logan Pierce? Her voice matched everything else about her, polished, controlled, with an undertone of something harder beneath the surface. "That's me." He set down his wrench, suddenly aware of the grease under his fingernails, the sweat stains on his work shirt, the general dishevelment of a man who'd been elbow-deep in engine blocks for 10 hours. "Can I help you with something? If you're having car trouble, I can take a quick look, but my car is fine." She stepped fully into the garage, her heels clicking against the concrete with purpose. "I'm Vanessa Hale." The name registered with the vague familiarity of someone he'd seen in newspaper headlines scrolled past on his phone. Business, technology, wealth. The kind of person who existed in a stratosphere so far above his own that their paths should never have crossed. "Okay," Logan said carefully, waiting for context that made sense of this situation. Vanessa's eyes swept across the garage, taking in the ancient hydraulic lift, the wall of used parts, the makeshift office corner where Logan did his bookkeeping on a laptop older than some of his tools. He felt himself bristle slightly under her scrutiny, that defensive pride that comes from knowing your life looks small to others but means everything to you. When her gaze returned to him, something in her expression had shifted. Softened, maybe. Or perhaps that was just the lighting. "I have a proposition for you," she said. Logan couldn't help it. He laughed. Short, sharp, laced with disbelief.
Lady, I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm a mechanic. I fix cars. I don't invest in tech startups or whatever you're selling. I'm not selling anything. Her voice remained steady, controlled. I need someone to accompany me to a family gathering this weekend, as my date. The silence that followed felt physical, pressing against Logan's eardrums like a change in altitude.
He stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the reveal that this was some elaborate prank. When neither came, he found his voice. I'm sorry. What? Vanessa reached into her bag, leather, probably Italian, definitely worth more than his truck, and pulled out what looked like a business card. She held it out to him. I'm willing to pay $50,000 for approximately 30 hours of your time this weekend. You would need to attend several events with me, primarily a family gathering at my parents' estate. The appearance would be that of a romantic relationship, though nothing physical beyond hand-holding and perhaps a brief kiss would be required. Logan took the card mechanically, his brain struggling to process the words coming out of this woman's mouth. The card was thick, expensive feeling. Just her name and a phone number, no company, no title. As if the name alone should be enough. This is insane, he said finally. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Why? The question came out sharper than he intended. Why would someone like you need to pay someone like me to pretend to be your boyfriend? You could have anyone. That's precisely the problem. For the first time, something cracked in her polished exterior, a flash of frustration, quickly controlled. Everyone in my social circle comes with expectations, agendas, connections that complicate everything. I need someone who exists completely outside that world. Someone with no ulterior motives beyond the financial transaction. Logan's eyes narrowed. You need someone you can control. I need someone I can trust to leave when it's over. The honesty in her voice surprised him. No lingering attachments, no attempts to leverage the connection for future benefit. You go back to your life, I go back to mine, and we both get what we need. And what exactly do you need? Logan heard himself ask, despite every rational thought screaming at him to politely decline and return to the simplicity of his transmission rebuild. Vanessa was quiet for a moment, her gaze drifting past him to the rain-streaked windows. My family is complicated. There are certain expectations about my personal life that I've been avoiding. This weekend, those expectations are coming to a head. I need to show them that I'm capable of maintaining a relationship, that I'm not, she paused, seeming to choose her words carefully, that I'm not entirely married to my work. So you want me to lie to your family? I want you to play a role, for one weekend, and in return you'll receive compensation that could change your life. Her eyes tracked back to him, and he saw her making those same cataloging observations he'd made about her. I did my research, Mr. Pierce. Your garage is struggling. You're 3 months behind on your commercial lease, your daughter needs dental work you've been postponing, and you've been eating the same rotation of 5 cheap meals for the past year. The invasion of privacy should have made him angry. Instead, Logan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach, because she was right about all of it. How did you... I'm thorough. There was no apology in her tone. I needed to know who I was approaching. You have no criminal record, no history of violence, an excellent reputation in this community. You're a good father, a reliable person, exactly what I need. Logan set the business card down on his workbench, creating distance from the temptation it represented. I appreciate the offer, I guess, but I can't. I have Sophie to think about, and I don't. Your daughter would be well cared for. I've arranged for a highly qualified nanny, background checked and vetted, who could stay with her for the weekend. Someone with pediatric nursing experience. You've already... Logan cut himself off, running a hand through his hair. You've got this all planned out. What if I'd said no? Then I would have moved on to the next candidate. Vanessa's matter-of-fact tone somehow made it worse. But you're my first choice. You have the right quality. And what quality is that? Authenticity. The word hung in the air between them. You don't perform. You simply are. That's rare in my world. Impossible to fake for an entire weekend. Logan turned away from her, ostensibly to put away his tools, but really to buy himself time to think. $50,000. The number kept echoing in his head, multiplying into solutions.
caught up rent, Sophie's braces, the transmission on his truck that was one bad shift away from catastrophic failure, maybe even a small cushion for the first time in years. But beneath the temptation ran a current of something darker, the knowledge that accepting this offer meant stepping into a world he didn't understand, playing a game whose rules he couldn't fathom, all while maintaining a lie that went against everything he tried to teach his daughter about honesty and integrity. "What happens when the weekend's over?" he asked without turning around. "Your family thinks we're together, and then what? You dump me? Make up some story?" "We have a natural endpoint built in. Geographic incompatibility. You have a business and a daughter here. I travel constantly for work. We tried. It didn't work out. We part as friends. Clean, simple, believable." "There's nothing clean or simple about lying to your entire family." "No," Vanessa agreed quietly. "There isn't, but it's necessary." Logan finally turned back to face her, studying her expression for cracks in the facade. "Why is it necessary? What aren't you telling me?" For a long moment, she didn't answer. The rain intensified outside, hammering the roof like it was trying to get in. When Vanessa finally spoke, her voice was lower, almost vulnerable. "My family's company is transitioning leadership. There are certainly board members, shareholders, people with power who question whether I'm stable enough for the role. Whether someone so focused on work, with no personal life, no emotional connections, can make balanced decisions. It's archaic and sexist, but it's reality. If I want to secure my position, I need to show them I'm a complete person, not just a workaholic with no life outside the office. So you're hiring a life. I'm hiring a solution to a problem I don't have time to solve conventionally." She met his eyes directly. "I could date someone from my world, let it develop naturally, but that takes months, maybe years, and I don't have that kind of time. This needs to happen now, this weekend, specifically." "Why this weekend?" "My father's 70th birthday. The entire family will be there, along with key board members and shareholders. It's the perfect opportunity to shift the narrative about who I am and what I'm capable of." Logan leaned back against his workbench, the metal edge pressing into his lower back, grounding him. "You know how this sounds, right? Like some kind of romantic comedy plot? Rich woman pays regular guy to pretend to be her boyfriend. Hijinks ensue." "I'm aware of the optics." A ghost of a smile touched Vanessa's lips, the first real expression he'd seen from her. "But I'm not looking for a romantic comedy ending. I'm looking for a business transaction. You provide a service, I provide compensation. That's all." "That's all," Logan echoed, but the words felt hollow. The door to the garage office opened, and Logan's heart jumped into his throat. Sophie appeared in her pajamas, the ones with the stars and moons that were getting too small, but she refused to give up, her hair messy from sleep, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, I heard voices. Are you almost done working?" Every protective instinct in Logan's body activated at once. He moved to intercept Sophie before she could fully enter the garage, scooping her up despite her protests that she was too big to be carried. "Hey, baby, I didn't mean to wake you. Just finishing up with a customer. Give me 5 more minutes, okay?" Sophie's sleepy gaze found Vanessa, and her eyes widened slightly. "You're pretty," she said, with the unfiltered honesty of a 7-year-old. "Are you a princess?" Vanessa's expression did something complex, surprise maybe, or something softer that Logan didn't have time to identify. "Thank you, but no, just a regular person." "You don't look regular." Sophie yawned, her head dropping onto Logan's shoulder. "You look like the ladies in the magazines at the grocery store." "Sophie," Logan warned gently, "that's enough. Say goodnight." "Good night, magazine lady," Sophie mumbled, already half asleep again. Logan carried his daughter back to the office, settling her on the worn couch he kept there for exactly these occasions, the nights when work ran late and Sophie's bedtime routine happened in the margins of his business. He grabbed a blanket from the closet, tucked it around her small form, and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Love you, baby." "Love you too, Daddy," she whispered, already drifting back to sleep. When he returned to the garage, Vanessa was standing exactly where he'd left her, but something about her posture had changed, less rigid, more human. "She's beautiful," Vanessa said simply. "She's everything." Logan's voice came out rougher than intended. "Which is why I can't take your offer. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I don't put Sophie in situations where she's around things that aren't real. She's already lost her mother. I won't make her world any more confusing than it has to be. The nanny I mentioned would be a stranger. Sophie doesn't do well with strangers, and I don't leave her with people I don't know. That's not negotiable. Vanessa nodded slowly, processing this boundary. What if you brought her? Logan stared at her. Excuse me? To the estate. My parents' home is enormous, with extensive grounds. There's a pool, a library, gardens. Other children will be there. Cousins, children of family friends. Sophie could have a weekend that feels like an adventure while being completely safe and supervised. You wouldn't be leaving her. You'd be including her in something that might actually be enjoyable for a child. You want me to bring my 7-year-old daughter to help you lie to your family? I want to remove the obstacle that's preventing you from accepting an offer that could materially improve both your lives. Vanessa's tone remained even, logical. Sophie wouldn't need to lie. She wouldn't need to perform. She would simply be a child enjoying a weekend at a beautiful estate. The narrative for the adults would be that we're in the early stages of a relationship, which is why you're bringing your daughter, showing that you're serious about integrating our lives. Logan wanted to find the flaw in this logic, wanted to identify the trap, but his mind kept circling back to the number, $50,000, the braces Sophie needed, the lease payment that would keep them from losing the garage, the peace of mind that came with a financial buffer for the first time in years. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course. Vanessa reached into her bag again, pulling out a slim folder. This contains the basic details. Schedule for the weekend, dress requirements, background information you'd need to know about my family and our supposed relationship. Read through it. If you're interested, call the number on my card by tomorrow afternoon. If I don't hear from you, I'll pursue other options. She held out the folder, and after a moment's hesitation, Logan took it. The paper felt expensive, like everything else about her. Why me? He asked again, needing to understand. Really? You could hire an actor, someone trained to play this kind of role. Why a mechanic from Riverside? Vanessa moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to face him. In the fluorescent light, with rain creating a curtain behind her, she looked less like the polished businesswoman who'd entered and more like someone carrying a weight she couldn't quite name. Because actors perform, she said quietly. And I need something real, even if the situation isn't. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her, the sound of expensive heels clicking across wet pavement, an engine starting, something foreign, probably German, definitely beyond Logan's tax bracket. He stood in the empty garage, the folder in his hands, Sophie sleeping in the office behind him, and the rain drumming its irregular rhythm against the roof. Everything in his life had been predictable for years now. Wake up, work, parent, sleep, repeat. The monotony had been suffocating, but at least it was safe. This offer was anything but safe. Logan returned to the office, checking on Sophie one more time before settling into his desk chair. The chair squeaked, another thing he'd been meaning to fix for months. He opened the folder. Inside was a schedule that read like something from a different universe. Friday evening. Informal family dinner. Approximately 40 guests. Cocktail attire. Saturday afternoon. Garden party and estate tour. Smart casual. Approximately 100 guests. Saturday evening. Formal birthday celebration. Black tie. 200 plus guests. Sunday morning. Family brunch. Business casual. Immediate family only, approximately 25 people. Each event was annotated with additional details, timing, key people who would be present, topics of conversation to avoid, appropriate talking points about their relationship. There was a biography of Vanessa that read like a corporate resume. Bachelor's from Stanford, MBA from Wharton, currently CEO of Hale Industries, a conglomerate with interests in technology, real estate, and renewable energy. Net worth estimated at $2.3 billion. No previous marriages, no children, no significant relationships that had made it into public record. A separate page outlined their fabricated relationship story. They'd met 3 months ago when Vanessa's car had broken down near his garage. He'd fixed it, they'd talked, discovered an unexpected connection, kept it quiet due to their different worlds, still figuring out if it could work long term. It was plausible.
Simple enough to remember, built on a foundation of half-truths that would be easier to maintain than complete fiction.
Logan found himself constructing the narrative in his mind, filling in details that made it feel real. What they'd talked about during that first meeting, how he'd called her the next day despite thinking someone like her would never be interested. The first time she'd come to the garage just to see him, not because her car needed work. He stopped himself. This was insane. He was actually considering this. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, his best friend and former army buddy, who ran the gym 3 blocks over. "You coming by tomorrow? Sophie mentioned you've been skipping workouts." Logan typed back, "Maybe. Got something I need to think through first." The response was immediate. "That sounds ominous. Everything okay?" "Not sure yet. Talk tomorrow?" "Always, brother." Logan set the phone down and returned to the folder. There was a page dedicated to what he would need to wear, with a note that a stylist would be provided to ensure appropriate attire for each event. Another page outlining Sophie's care if she came along. A dedicated staff member who specialized in children, access to all estate amenities, meals tailored to any dietary restrictions. The last page was the contract itself. 1 weekend, $50,000, paid in full upon completion. Non-disclosure agreement regarding the nature of the arrangement. Clean termination with no strings attached. At the bottom, a handwritten note in elegant script. "I know this is unconventional, but sometimes the best solutions are the ones we never saw coming." Logan closed the folder and sat in the squeaky chair, listening to Sophie's soft breathing from the couch. The rain still falling outside, the fluorescent lights still flickering their familiar pattern. In the military, he'd learned to assess risks quickly, calculate potential outcomes, identify acceptable losses, make decisions under pressure. This skill had translated well to fatherhood, to business ownership, to the daily calculus of keeping life stable and safe. But this decision didn't fit into any framework he knew. The risk wasn't physical danger or financial ruin in the traditional sense. It was something more nebulous, the risk of stepping outside the carefully controlled boundaries he'd built around his life. The risk of seeing how the other half lived and not being able to unsee it. The risk of temporary wealth making permanent poverty feel even more crushing. And yet, $50,000. Sophie's laugh when she wasn't self-conscious about her crooked teeth. The garage he'd built from nothing but might lose to nothing if one more major repair came in that he couldn't afford to do properly. The small luxuries that other parents took for granted, birthday parties, school field trips, new clothes that weren't from the thrift store. His phone buzzed again. Not Marcus this time, but an email notification. The subject line read, "Pierce Auto. Final notice. Lease payment." Logan didn't need to open it to know what it said. 3 months behind. 1 month away from eviction proceedings. He'd been negotiating with the landlord, buying time with promises he wasn't sure he could keep. This offer could end that uncertainty. Completely. Immediately. He looked at Sophie again, her small form buried in the oversized blanket, her hand curled under her chin the way Emily used to sleep. What would Emily think about this? Would she tell him to protect their daughter from artificial situations and stick to the honest life they'd planned? Or would she be pragmatic, understanding that sometimes survival required flexibility? He'd never know. That was the cruel reality of grief. All the conversations you'd never have, all the joint decisions that became solo ones. What he did know was that Emily had wanted the best for Sophie, had wanted their daughter to have opportunities, experiences, a life unconstrained by the financial anxiety that had plagued their own childhoods. If this weekend could buy Sophie years of stability, years without her father stressed about money, years where dental work didn't get postponed and field trips didn't get skipped. Logan pulled out his phone and stared at Vanessa's business card, the number printed in minimalist font. His thumb hovered over the digits. 1 weekend, 30 hours, $50,000. He thought about the way Vanessa had looked at Sophie, that flicker of something genuine beneath the polished exterior. He thought about her admission that she needed something real, even in a fake situation. He thought about the weight in her voice when she talked about her family's expectations, the vulnerability she'd tried to hide. This wasn't just a business transaction for her, despite her clinical presentation. There was something deeper happening, something that resonated with Logan's own experience of being judged, found wanting, measured against standards that didn't account for the full complexity of a human life.
Maybe they weren't so different after all. Maybe that's why she'd chosen him, recognized a fellow traveler in the space between who you were and who everyone expected you to be. Logan's finger moved, typing out the number, pulling up a new message. He wrote and deleted 3 different versions before settling on something simple. This is Logan Pierce. I need to talk through some logistics, but I'm interested. Call me tomorrow morning after 9. He hit send before he could reconsider. The message showed as delivered immediately. Then 3 dots appeared, indicating Vanessa was typing. At 10:47 p.m. on a Saturday night, she was awake, phone in hand, waiting. Perfect. I'll call at 9:15. Thank you, Logan. He set the phone down, his heart rate elevated, adrenaline making his hands slightly unsteady. What had he just agreed to? What was he getting himself into? The rain began to let up, transitioning from downpour to drizzle. Logan stood, moved to the garage door, and looked out at the wet street, the dim streetlights reflecting off puddles. His kingdom. His small, manageable world where he understood the rules and his place in them. Come Monday, after this weekend was over, he'd return to this exact spot. Same view, same life, same Logan. Except his bank account would have 5 zeros it didn't have before. Except Sophie would have the dental care she needed. Except the garage would be secure for another year at least. One weekend couldn't change who he fundamentally was. It was just a performance, a role, a means to an end that would help him be a better father and business owner. He almost believed it. Behind him, Sophie stirred, mumbling something in her sleep. Logan returned to the office, gently lifted her into his arms, and carried her upstairs to the apartment. She barely woke as he changed her into fresh pajamas and tucked her into bed, her stuffed elephant, a gift from Emily before Sophie was even born, pulled close to her chest. Love you, baby girl, Logan whispered, smoothing hair back from her forehead. Love you too, Daddy. Is the pretty lady your friend? The question, barely conscious, landed like a stone in still water. Maybe, Logan said softly. We'll see. Kay, she seemed sad. You should be her friend. You're good at making people not sad. Sophie's words trailed off into genuine sleep. Logan stood there in the darkness of his daughter's room, listening to her breathe, his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Out of the mouths of babes, as the saying went. Sophie had seen in 30 seconds what Logan had been trying to rationalize for the past hour. Beneath Vanessa's polished exterior was someone who needed exactly what he'd given Sophie tonight. Presence. Steadiness. Someone who didn't want anything except to ease the loneliness. Maybe this weekend wouldn't be about pretending at all. Maybe it would be about offering someone the same kind of quiet support that had saved him in his darkest moments after Emily's death. The friends who showed up without agenda, who sat with him in silence, who reminded him through simple presence that he wasn't alone. He could do that for Vanessa. Could be that steady presence beside her while she navigated whatever complex family dynamics she was facing. Not as a performance, but as a genuine human connection, temporary though it might be. And if that genuine connection happened to come with financial compensation that would change his life, well, maybe that's just how the universe balanced things out sometimes. Logan returned to his own room, set his alarm for 7 a.m. Sophie would be up by 7:30, and Sunday mornings were their time for pancakes and cartoons, and lay down on the bed, still fully clothed. Sleep felt impossible. His mind was already racing through scenarios, questions, logistics. What would he tell Sophie? The truth, but age-appropriate. That he was helping someone with a project that involved going to a fancy party. That it was like dress-up, pretend, the game she played with her friends. Would she buy that? Would she ask questions he couldn't answer honestly? What would he tell Marcus? His friend would know immediately that something was off, would push for details, would probably think Logan had lost his mind. But Marcus had always supported his decisions, even the questionable ones. Especially the questionable ones. What would he tell himself when he looked in the mirror in a rented tuxedo, about to enter a world of wealth and privilege he'd never experienced? When he shook hands with billionaires and made small talk with people who spent more on wine than he made in a month? That it was temporary. That it was necessary. That it was in its own strange way honest, because he would be genuinely trying to help someone who needed help, even if the methods were unconventional. His phone buzzed one more time. Another message from Vanessa. I should mention, You can bring one friend to Saturday's party if you'd like. Sometimes having backup makes these things easier. Just let me know. Logan smiled despite himself. She'd thought of everything, had anticipated his discomfort, his need for something familiar, in an unfamiliar environment. He typed back, "Might take you up on that. My friend Marcus would either love this or think I've completely lost it. Probably both. Both reactions seem reasonable. See you tomorrow, Logan. And thank you again. Don't thank me yet. I haven't done anything. You said yes, that's more than you think." Logan set the phone on his nightstand and closed his eyes. Through the thin walls of the apartment, he could hear the familiar sounds of home, the refrigerator humming, the old building settling, distant traffic on the main road. These sounds had been his lullaby for 3 years now, the soundtrack to a life that was small but his own. For one weekend, he would step away from this soundtrack into something completely different. And then he would come back, changed or unchanged, richer or just the same, but definitely back. Because this was home. This garage, this apartment, this life with Sophie. No amount of money, no glimpse of luxury could alter that fundamental truth. Could it? The question followed him into uneasy sleep, where his dreams mixed images of oil-stained concrete and marble floors, Sophie's laugh, and Vanessa's measured voice, the life he knew and the weekend that waited. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The city settled into that particular quiet of late Saturday night becoming early Sunday morning, and in a garage on the edge of Riverside, a mechanic slept fitfully, unaware that his simple yes to an impossible question had set in motion a weekend that would redefine everything he thought he knew about connection, class, and the strange alchemy that happens when two people from different worlds choose to meet in the middle. The transformation had already begun, not in the external trappings that would come, the clothes, the setting, the performance, but in the internal shift that happens when a person decides that safety, while comfortable, isn't enough. That sometimes the best path forward requires stepping into uncertainty with nothing but hope and determination to guide you. Logan Pierce had spent 3 years playing it safe, building walls, controlling variables, minimizing risk. Tomorrow morning at 9:15, when his phone rang and Vanessa's voice outlined the details of their arrangement, those walls would begin to crack. And by the end of the weekend, they might crumble entirely. But that revelation still waited in the future, unknown and unknowable, as Sunday's dawn approached, and a single father dreamed of marble floors, while his daughter, in the next room, dreamed of pretty ladies who seemed sad, and daddies who were good at making people not sad anymore. Sometimes the universe speaks through the innocent wisdom of children. Sometimes it speaks through impossible offers from strangers in expensive coats. And sometimes, if you're very lucky or very foolish, you listen to both and see where they lead. Logan Pierce was about to find out which category he fell into. The clock on his nightstand glowed 11:47 p.m. In 13 hours and 28 minutes, his phone would ring and the weekend would officially begin. He slept, finally, deeply, dreamlessly. And when morning came, bringing with it Sophie's excited chatter about pancakes and the distant ring of his phone at exactly 9:15, Logan Pierce answered with a steady voice and a decision made. "Hello, Vanessa. Let's talk about this weekend." The words hung in the air, simple and irrevocable, the beginning of something neither of them could fully predict but both desperately needed. Outside, Sunday morning in Riverside carried on, oblivious to the quiet revolution happening in the apartment above Pierce Auto Repair, where a mechanic and a billionaire began planning a performance that would feel more real than either expected, and where a 7-year-old girl finished her pancakes, completely unaware that her simple observation about sadness and friendship would prove to be the most honest thing said all weekend. The story had begun, and there was no turning back now. The phone call lasted 47 minutes. By the time Logan set down his phone, Sophie had finished her pancakes and moved on to building an elaborate castle out of couch cushions in the living room, her Sunday morning routine undisturbed by the conversation that had just rearranged her father's immediate future. Vanessa's voice had been different on the phone, less guarded than it had been in the garage, though still maintaining that professional distance that seemed as natural to her as breathing. She'd walked him through every detail with the precision of someone who planned corporate acquisitions, not weekend charades. "The stylist will meet you at your garage tomorrow at 2, she'd said. "Her name is Patricia. She's discreet and efficient. She'll need about 2 hours to get measurements and discuss your preferences for the weekend wardrobe. Preferences? Logan had asked, watching Sophie add another cushion to her increasingly unstable tower. I wear jeans and work shirts. I don't have preferences about formal wear. You will after talking to Patricia. There had been something almost amused in Vanessa's tone. She's worked with men who've never worn a suit before. You won't be her first project. The word project had stung slightly, but Logan understood what she meant. He was raw material that needed refinement for the performance ahead. They'd discussed Sophie at length. Vanessa had already arranged for someone named Claire, a former elementary school teacher with childcare certifications that read like a resume for protecting royalty, to meet them both on Friday before they left for the estate. I want Sophie to feel comfortable, Vanessa had explained.
Claire will spend a few hours with you both. Let Sophie get to know her in a familiar environment. If your daughter doesn't warm up to her, we'll find someone else. Just like that? Logan had asked. You'll find someone else on 2 days' notice? I have resources, Logan. That's what you're supposed to be impressed by this weekend. The dry humor in her voice had surprised him. Might as well use them for something that matters.
Now, watching Sophie's castle teeter dangerously, Logan tried to process everything that had been set in motion. Tomorrow, Patricia the stylist. Tuesday, a package would arrive containing his fitted wardrobe for the weekend. Wednesday, a meeting with Vanessa to review their story and practice their comfort level with casual physical contact. Nothing inappropriate, she'd assured him, just making sure we can hold hands without looking like strangers. Thursday, Sophie would meet Claire, and Friday afternoon, a car would pick them up and drive them to the Hale family estate, located 2 hours north in wine country, where Logan would step into a performance he still wasn't entirely sure he could pull off. Daddy? Sophie's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Why are you making that face? What face? The thinking too hard face. The one you make when you're trying to fix something complicated. She abandoned her castle and climbed onto the couch beside him, her small body warm against his side. Logan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I've got something to tell you, baby. About this weekend. Sophie's eyes widened with the particular excitement of a child who senses adventure. Are we going somewhere? We are. Remember the pretty lady from last night? Miss Vanessa? The magazine lady, Sophie nodded enthusiastically. Is she your friend now? Sort of. She asked me to help her with something this weekend, and part of helping means we get to stay at a really big house in the country, like a mansion, with a pool and a library and gardens. Sophie's mouth formed a perfect O of amazement. Like a princess house? Kind of like that, yeah. Logan chose his words carefully, aware that whatever he said now would shape how Sophie processed the entire weekend. Miss Vanessa is having a big party for her family, and she needs someone there who makes her feel comfortable. Like when you bring Mr. Elephant to school because he helps you feel brave. Sophie clutched her stuffed elephant closer, processing this comparison. I'm going to help her feel brave. We both are. But mostly, you're going to have fun. There will be other kids there, and a really nice lady named Claire who's going to make sure you have everything you need while I'm at the grown-up events. Why can't I come to the grown-up events? The question held no petulance, just genuine curiosity. Because they'll be boring, Logan said honestly. People standing around talking about business and stuff you don't care about. But during the day, you can swim and explore and do fun things. And we'll have breakfast together every morning, just like always. Sophie seemed to consider this arrangement, her 7-year-old logic working through the details. Is Miss Vanessa sad because she doesn't have a daddy to make her feel brave? The insight made Logan's chest tighten. Maybe. Or maybe she just needs a friend. Sometimes grown-ups need friends too. Okay. Sophie settled against him, apparently satisfied with this explanation. Can I bring my princess dress? If we're going to a princess house? You can bring whatever you want, baby. And Mr. Elephant? Mr. Elephant is mandatory. Sophie giggled, and the sound eased some of the tension Logan had been carrying since last night. This was going to be okay. It was just a weekend, an adventure. A story Sophie would tell for years about the time she stayed in a mansion and swam in a fancy pool. The rest of Sunday passed in comfortable routine. Lunch at the diner where they were regulars, a trip to the park despite the lingering dampness from yesterday's rain, movie night on the couch with popcorn and Sophie's current favorite animated film that Logan had seen so many times he could recite the dialogue. Normal. Safe. The life he'd built and would return to after this weekend detour. Monday arrived with the particular chaos of school mornings. Sophie couldn't find her homework, then couldn't find her shoes. Then remembered at the last possible moment that she needed to bring something that started with the letter T for show and tell. Toothbrush? Logan suggested, already running late to open the garage. Boring, Sophie protested. Turtle? He gestured to her small plastic turtle from the bathtub. Everyone does animals. I need something special. They settled on a small adjustable wrench. It's a tool, which starts with T. And Logan drove her to school with 3 minutes to spare before the bell. He watched her run across the playground, backpack bouncing, Mr. Wrench clutched in her hand, and felt the familiar mix of pride and melancholy that came with watching her grow up. The garage was busy that morning, 3 oil changes, a brake job, and Mrs. Henderson finally authorizing the transmission work. Logan lost himself in the familiar rhythm of automotive repair, the physical work that required just enough concentration to quiet the louder thoughts. At precisely 2 o'clock, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the garage. A woman emerged who looked to be in her 50s, dressed in what Logan's mother would have called business casual. Tailored pants, a crisp blouse, an air of competent efficiency. Mr. Pierce? She extended a hand. I'm Patricia Chen. Shall we get started? Patricia worked with the swift precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. She took measurements with a fabric tape that she wielded like a surgeon's instrument, making notes on a tablet, asking questions about his comfort level with different styles and fits. Miss Hale mentioned you prefer practical over flashy, Patricia said, circling him with an assessing eye. I can work with that. Classic cuts, quality fabrics, nothing that will make you feel like you're wearing a costume. Appreciate that, Logan said, standing still as she measured his inseam. I already feel like I'm playing dress-up. Everyone feels that way their first time in formal wear. Patricia made another note. The trick is finding pieces that fit so well they stop feeling like clothes and start feeling like a second skin. By Saturday night, you won't even notice the tuxedo. I doubt that. Trust me, I've dressed tech billionaires who showed up to their first board meeting in cargo shorts. You're starting from a much better baseline. She stepped back, reviewing her tablet. You've got good proportions. Athletic build, but not overly muscular. Classic features. This is going to be easier than I expected. Logan wasn't sure how to respond to being assessed like a project, so he said nothing. Patricia packed up her equipment with the same efficiency she'd displayed unpacking it. The clothes will arrive Tuesday by noon. Everything will have been tailored to your measurements. If anything doesn't fit perfectly, call the number in the package. Someone will come make adjustments immediately. Just like that? Just like that, Mr. Pierce. Miss Hale pays for excellence. Patricia paused at the door. A word of advice, if you'll take it? Sure. Everyone at that estate this weekend will be judging you, measuring you against their expectations of who Miss Hale should be with. Don't try to be what you think they want. Be exactly who you are. That's what she hired you for. Then she was gone, the black sedan disappearing down the street, leaving Logan standing in his garage wondering how a wardrobe consultant had managed to see straight through to his deepest anxiety about the weekend ahead. Tuesday's package arrived as promised, 3 large boxes containing more clothes than Logan typically bought in 5 years. Each item was wrapped in tissue paper and labeled with the event it corresponded to. He unpacked them in the apartment after picking up Sophie from school, letting her exclaim over the fancy daddy clothes, while he tried on pieces and found, to his surprise, that Patricia had been right. Everything fit like it had been made for his body specifically, which he supposed it had. The tuxedo for Saturday night was particularly stunning, midnight blue instead of black, with subtle details that elevated it beyond standard rental fare. Logan stood in front of the bathroom mirror, Sophie perched on the counter beside him, and barely recognized himself. You look like a movie star, Daddy, Sophie breathed, touching the fabric with careful fingers. I look like someone pretending to be a movie star, Logan corrected, but even he had to admit the transformation was remarkable. Wednesday evening brought the meeting with Vanessa, this time at a quiet coffee shop equidistant between their two worlds. Logan arrived first, ordering a regular coffee and settling into a corner booth where they'd have privacy without seeming suspicious. Vanessa arrived exactly on time, dressed down from their first meeting. Jeans, a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, more approachable, though the observant intelligence in her eyes remained unchanged. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "I know this is adding to your schedule. Sophie's with Marcus at his gym. She's learning to box, apparently, so I've got time." Logan took a sip of his coffee. Patricia came by. "The clothes fit." "She's very good at what she does." Vanessa ordered an espresso from the passing waitress, then turned her attention fully to Logan. "I thought we should practice our story, make sure we're aligned on the details." For the next hour, they constructed their fictional relationship with the care of architects designing a building. They decided Logan had fixed a sensor issue in her car, specific enough to be believable, simple enough that neither of them would get tripped up on technical details. They talked while he worked, discovered a surprising ease with each other, exchanged numbers. The first date had been coffee, like this, simple, no pretense. "Why would someone like you go for coffee with a mechanic?" Logan asked, genuinely curious about her logic. Vanessa's fingers traced the rim of her espresso cup. "Because I'm tired of men who want something from me. Access to my network, my money, my influence. You didn't even know who I was. That would be refreshing." The honesty in her voice made Logan look at her differently, not as the polished businesswoman or the desperate employer, but as someone who'd spent years being valued for everything except herself. "That's actually believable," he said quietly. "Most good lies are built on truth." Vanessa met his eyes. "My family will ask you questions, personal questions designed to trip you up. They'll want to know what we have in common, why I'm interested in you, what your intentions are." "What should I say my intentions are?" "That we're taking it slow. That you're protective of Sophie and won't introduce her to someone unless you're serious. That you don't care about my money. You have your own business and your own life. You're not looking for a handout or a shortcut." Logan nodded slowly, all of which is actually true. "Exactly." Vanessa's expression softened slightly. "The best part of this arrangement is that you don't have to pretend to be someone else. Just pretend to have feelings you don't." "How hard can that be?" Logan tried for levity, but the question felt heavier than intended. They practiced casual touches. Vanessa's hand on his arm, Logan's hand at the small of her back, fingers intertwined across the table. Each contact was brief, professional, carefully calibrated. But Logan noticed things. The way Vanessa tensed slightly before relaxing into the touch, as if physical contact was something she had to consciously allow. The warmth of her skin through the sweater fabric, the faint scent of something expensive and understated that he'd notice again later and associate with this moment. "You're good at this," Vanessa observed as they finished their coffee. "The touching doesn't seem forced." "I was married for 6 years, Logan said simply. "Casual affection was part of that. Muscle memory, I guess." Something flickered across Vanessa's face. Sympathy, maybe, or recognition of shared loss. "Patricia mentioned you're widowed. I'm sorry. I should have said that earlier." "It's been 3 years. I'm past the part where every mention feels like a knife." Logan surprised himself with the admission. "Mostly." "Does Sophie remember her mother?" "Some. More the feeling of her than specific memories. She was only 4 when Emily died." Logan looked down at his empty coffee cup. "Sometimes I worry that I'm the only one keeping Emily alive for her. That when Sophie thinks about family, it's just me. And that feels insufficient." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of understanding. "Being someone's entire world is terrifying. I can't imagine doing it with a child." "You get used to the terror," Logan said. "It becomes background noise." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that exists between people who've accidentally revealed more than intended and are deciding whether to retreat or lean into the vulnerability. "My family will love Sophie," Vanessa said finally. "Children are currency in my world. Evidence of normalcy, continuity, future generations. The fact that you're a single father will actually work in our favor. It makes you sympathetic, responsible, someone who's overcome adversity. I'm a prop in your redemption narrative." "We're props in each other's narratives this weekend." Vanessa's directness was almost refreshing. "The difference is, I'm paying you to be mine." Logan laughed, short and sharp. "You don't pull punches, do you? I found that clarity prevents complications." Vanessa gathered her coat, preparing to leave. One more thing, my mother will try to get you alone at some point. She'll want to assess whether you're genuine or if I've hired someone to play a part. Ironic. Extremely. If she asks directly, deny it. She's testing your loyalty to me, your willingness to maintain our story even under pressure. The right answer is always to deflect and protect the relationship. Logan shook his head, bemused. Your family sounds exhausting. They are, but they're also brilliant, accomplished, and fiercely protective in their own dysfunctional way. You'll understand when you meet them. Vanessa stood, then hesitated. Logan, thank you for taking this seriously. I know it must seem ridiculous from the outside. It seems ridiculous from the inside too, Logan admitted. But I'm here. We're doing this. Yes, we are. Vanessa's smile was small but genuine. I'll see you Friday. The car will pick you up at 3. She left, and Logan sat in the booth for a few more minutes, processing the strange intimacy of the past hour. They'd shared more real conversation in 60 minutes than some couples managed in months. The irony of finding genuine connection in a fake relationship wasn't lost on him. Thursday evening brought Claire, the childcare specialist who would be Sophie's companion for the weekend. She arrived at the garage at 6, after Sophie had finished her homework and was in the mood to be social. Claire was younger than Logan expected, late 20s, with warm brown eyes and an easy manner that immediately put Sophie at ease. She'd brought a book about a girl who loved elephants, which earned Sophie's instant approval. Mr. Elephant is my best friend, Sophie announced, producing the stuffed animal from her backpack. Well, my best friend who's an elephant. My best friend who's a person is Emma from school. That's very organized of you, Claire said seriously. Having categories for best friends. I like that. They spent 2 hours together, Claire, Sophie, and Logan, playing board games and talking about the weekend ahead. Claire described the pool at the estate, the library full of books, the gardens where you could find frogs if you looked carefully. She never talked down to Sophie, never treated her like a child who needed to be managed, just like a person who happened to be 7. By the time Claire left, Sophie was excited about the weekend instead of anxious, already making plans for all the exploring she'd do. She's nice, Daddy, Sophie said as Logan tucked her into bed. I like her. I'm glad, baby. You'll have fun with her while I'm at the boring grown-up stuff. Will you have fun with Miss Vanessa? The question caught Logan off guard. I don't know, maybe. It's complicated. Why is it complicated? How to explain to a 7-year-old that he was being paid to pretend to care about someone, even though the pretending was starting to feel less like acting and more like permission to feel something he'd been avoiding for 3 years? Because grown-up friendship is weird sometimes, Logan settled on. But I think Miss Vanessa is nice, and I think she needs friends, like you said, so maybe we'll both have fun helping her. Sophie seemed satisfied with this answer. Okay. Good night, Daddy. I love you. Love you too, baby. More than anything in this whole world. Friday arrived with the particular electricity of impending change. Logan closed the garage early, ignoring the lost revenue in favor of having time to prepare properly. He showered, shaved carefully, dressed in the smart casual outfit Patricia had provided for travel, chinos and a button-down that somehow made him look put together without trying too hard. Sophie wore her favorite dress, the purple one with flowers, and had insisted on braiding her own hair, which resulted in a lopsided but charming attempt that Logan didn't have the heart to fix. The car arrived at exactly 3 o'clock. Not a sedan this time, but a luxury SUV with tinted windows and a driver who introduced himself as Thomas, then efficiently loaded their bags into the trunk. Marcus had stopped by that morning, ostensibly to check on the garage's security system, but really to give Logan a look that said, "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm helping someone out," Logan had explained. "Making some money, taking Sophie on an adventure. That's it." That's it? Marcus had crossed his arms, his former military bullshit detector clearly activated. "Brother, I've known you for 15 years. You don't do things like this. You don't step outside your comfort zone. You definitely don't hang out with billionaires for weekends." "Maybe it's time I did. Or maybe you're running from something." Marcus's voice had gentled. 3 years is a long time to stay in the same place, Logan. I get it, but make sure you're moving forward, not just sideways into something that'll hurt worse. The conversation echoed in Logan's mind as the SUV pulled away from the garage,
Sophie pressed against the window, exclaiming over the fancy car and all its features.
Thomas had provided iPads in the back seat, child-friendly movies queued up, bottles of water and juice in the center console. Every detail anticipated, every comfort provided. This was Vanessa's world, where needs were met before you knew you had them, where money smoothed every rough edge until life became a frictionless glide from one luxury to the next. The landscape changed as they drove north, urban sprawl giving way to suburbs, suburbs yielding to countryside, hills rising in the distance, covered with the precise rows of vineyards. This was wine country, where wealthy people owned second homes and tasting rooms, where weekends meant leisurely drives and expensive bottles opened without thought to cost. Sophie had fallen asleep halfway through her movie, her head on Logan's shoulder, Mr. Elephant clutched to her chest. Logan watched the scenery pass and tried to quiet the anxiety building in his chest. What was he doing here? What had possessed him to think he could pull this off? He was a mechanic from Riverside, a widowed single father whose idea of a fancy dinner was taking Sophie to the sit-down pizza place instead of getting takeout. These weren't his people. This wasn't his world. But $50,000. The number kept returning, steady as a heartbeat. $50,000 that would change everything for Sophie, for the garage, for their future. He could do this. He'd done harder things. Survived war, survived grief, survived the daily grind of single parenthood. One weekend of pretending, of playing a role, of being someone's buffer against family pressure, that was nothing compared to what he'd already endured. The SUV turned off the main road onto a private drive, and Logan's breath caught. The estate spread before them like something from a movie. Rolling lawns, mature trees, gardens that looked professionally maintained, and at the center, a house that defied the word house and demanded to be called something grander. Mansion, manor, monument to wealth. "Daddy?" Sophie breathed, awake now and pressed against the window. "It's a castle. A real castle." "It's pretty impressive," Logan agreed, his mouth dry. The SUV followed the circular drive to the main entrance, where someone was already waiting. Vanessa, dressed in casual elegance that probably cost more than Logan's entire wardrobe, descended the front steps with a smile that looked almost genuine. Thomas opened the door, and Logan stepped out onto gravel that crunched expensively under his feet. The air smelled different here, clean, with hints of flowers and fresh-cut grass, and something indefinable that might just have been money. "Logan?" Vanessa's greeting was warm, appropriate for someone greeting a boyfriend they hadn't seen in a few days. She moved toward him naturally, and Logan met her halfway, remembering their practiced touches from the coffee shop. Her hand found his arm, his hand settled at her waist, and they stood close enough that it looked intimate without being inappropriate. "This is incredible," Logan said honestly, gesturing at the estate. "It's home," Vanessa replied, but something in her tone suggested the word home carried complicated weight. She turned her attention to Sophie, who was emerging from the SUV with wide eyes and Mr. Elephant. "And you must be Sophie! I'm so glad you could come." Sophie, normally shy with new adults, seemed emboldened by the fairy tale setting. "Your house is like where a princess would live." "I'll take that as a compliment." Vanessa crouched down to Sophie's level, a gesture Logan noticed and appreciated. "I hear you like elephants?" "Mr. Elephant is my best friend." "Well, best friend in the elephant category." "That's very organized. I like organized people." Vanessa's smile was genuine now, not the professional mask she'd worn at the garage. "There's a library here with a whole section about elephants. Real elephants from Africa and Asia." "Would you like to see it later?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically, and just like that, Vanessa had won her over. Logan felt something in his chest relax slightly. Whatever happened this weekend, Sophie would be okay. She'd have an adventure, make memories, come home with stories about the princess house, and the pool, and the elephant books. Claire appeared from somewhere inside the house, greeting Sophie like a friend she hadn't seen in days instead of someone she'd met once. "Want to see your room? It's got a window seat where you can read, and the view is amazing." Sophie looked to Logan for permission. He nodded. "Go ahead, baby. I'll come check on you in a bit." And then it was just him and Vanessa, standing in the circular drive of an estate that probably appeared in architectural magazines, about to walk into a performance that would define their weekend. "Ready?" Vanessa asked quietly. Logan took a breath,
squared his shoulders, and met her eyes. As I'll ever be. That's all I need. She linked her arm through his, a casual gesture that felt surprisingly natural. Welcome to the chaos, Logan Pierce. Try to enjoy the ride. They walked toward the entrance together, crossing the threshold from his world into hers, from reality into performance, from certainty into the unknown territory of a weekend that would test everything he thought he knew about connection, class, and the strange alchemy that happens when two people choose to stand together against the world's judgment. The heavy door closed behind them with a sound like finality, and Logan's weekend in another world officially began. The interior of the Hale estate managed to be both overwhelming and intimate simultaneously. Soaring ceilings gave way to smaller, carefully curated spaces. Art that Logan vaguely recognized from museum visits hung casually on walls like family photos. The floors were marble in the entrance hall, transitioning to dark hardwood that probably cost more per square foot than Logan's entire apartment. A woman appeared from a side corridor, moving with the efficient grace of someone who'd worked in luxury homes for decades. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and been impressed by very little. "Miss Hale," she said with a warmth that transformed her entire face. "Welcome home. And this must be Mr. Pierce. Margaret, this is Logan." Vanessa's introduction was smooth, natural. "Logan, Margaret runs this entire estate and has since I was 12 years old. If you need anything this weekend and can't find me, she's your second best option." "Only second best?" Margaret's eyes sparkled with humor as she shook Logan's hand. Her grip was firm, assessing. "I'll have to up my game." "Where's my mother?" Vanessa asked, her tone carefully neutral. "In the solarium with your Aunt Catherine. Your father's in his study, taking calls. Your brother won't arrive until tomorrow morning." Margaret's gaze shifted to Logan with something that might have been sympathy. "Dinner is at 7. Cocktails at 6:30 in the East Drawing Room. Informal tonight, given it's just family." Just family in this context apparently meant something different than Logan's understanding. In his world, family dinner was him and Sophie at their small kitchen table, maybe Marcus joining them if he wasn't working. Here, just family seemed to require cocktail hours and designated drawing rooms. "I'll show Logan to his suite," Vanessa said. "Is Sophie already settled?" Claire took her upstairs about 10 minutes ago. The child was enchanted by everything, particularly the chandelier in the main hall. She asked if it was made of diamonds. Margaret's smile was genuine. "I told her it was crystal, but that diamonds would have been a lovely choice." Logan felt something warm spread through his chest at the image of Sophie, wide-eyed and wondering, being treated with kindness by this woman who probably dealt with entitled wealthy people daily. Vanessa led him through the house, their footsteps echoing on polished floors. She pointed out various rooms as they passed. The library where Sophie would spend time, the music room that hadn't been used in years, the formal dining room that seated 40. Each space was more impressive than the last, decorated with the kind of casual wealth that didn't announce itself but simply existed. "You're in the East Wing," Vanessa explained as they climbed a curved staircase that belonged in a period drama. "Sophie's room is next to yours, with Claire in the adjoining suite. I'm in the West Wing, which gives us appropriate distance for a relationship that's still relatively new." "You've thought of everything." "I've had to." Vanessa paused at her door, her hand on the ornate handle. "My family notices everything. Inconsistencies, hesitations, anything that suggests artifice. The physical separation of our rooms makes sense given where we are in this supposed relationship. Too close would seem presumptuous. The same room would be impossible to explain," Logan finished. "Exactly." She opened the door to reveal a suite that was larger than Logan's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. A massive bed dominated one wall, and a sitting area with a fireplace occupied another corner. The bathroom, visible through an open door, featured marble everything and a shower that could fit 4 people. "This is where I'm staying?" Logan's voice came out slightly strangled. "Is it acceptable?" Vanessa seemed genuinely concerned he might say no. "Vanessa, I sleep in a converted storage room above my garage. This is a different universe." Something flickered across her face, that same vulnerability he'd glimpsed in the coffee shop, quickly controlled. "I know this world is overwhelming,
But you belong here this weekend, not because of what you own or who you know, but because I asked you to be here. That's all the justification you need. Logan set his bag down on a chair that probably cost more than his truck. Easy for you to say. You were born into this.
That doesn't mean I'm comfortable in it. The admission was quiet, almost lost in the vast room. My whole life has been spent in spaces like this, surrounded by people who measure worth in stock portfolios and social connections. And I've never felt like I quite fit, either. Too driven, too focused, too unwilling to play the games everyone else seems to understand instinctively. Logan turned to face her fully.
Is that why you really need me here? Not just to prove you can maintain a relationship, but to have someone else who doesn't quite fit? Vanessa's expression was unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled, small and genuine. Maybe. Or maybe I just needed someone who wouldn't pretend this is all normal. Who'd look at a guest suite and think it's a different universe instead of barely adequate. Well, I'm your guy for honest reactions. Logan glanced around the room again, shaking his head. Fair warning, I'm going to embarrass myself this weekend. I'll use the wrong fork, call your father Mr. Hale instead of whatever his title is, and probably say something completely inappropriate at dinner. Good. Vanessa moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. My family expects perfection. Rehearsed answers, political correctness, everyone playing their assigned roles. If you're slightly rough around the edges, it makes our relationship more believable. I wouldn't fall for someone who fits seamlessly into this world. I'd fall for someone who challenges it. After she left, Logan explored the suite like Sophie might explore a new playground, with wonder and slight disbelief. The closet already contained his wardrobe for the weekend, each outfit hung with care and labeled with the corresponding event. The bathroom had more amenities than most hotel spas. The view from the windows showed gardens that seemed to stretch forever, maintained to impossible perfection. A knock interrupted his exploration. Sophie burst in before he could answer, Claire following more sedately behind. "Daddy!" Sophie's excitement was palpable. "My room has a bed with curtains, like a real princess bed. And Claire said there are horses we can see tomorrow. And the pool has a slide, and..." Logan scooped her up, her enthusiasm infectious. "Sounds like you're going to have an amazing weekend." "Are you having an amazing weekend?" Sophie's question was innocent, but her eyes were perceptive. "Ask me after dinner," Logan said. "Right now I'm just trying not to break anything expensive." Claire smiled from the doorway. Sophie wanted to make sure you'd seen her room and approved. "I promised we wouldn't bother you long." "You're not bothering me." Logan set Sophie down but kept hold of her hand. "Show me this princess bed." Sophie's room was indeed spectacular, decorated in soft purples and whites, with a canopy bed that looked like something from a fairy tale. Books lined built-in shelves, toys were arranged invitingly in a corner, and the bathroom featured a tub with jets that Sophie demonstrated with great enthusiasm. "Can we stay here forever?" Sophie asked, only half joking. "Just for the weekend, baby. Then we go home to our regular life." "But this is so much better." Logan knelt down to her level, his hands on her small shoulders. "This is fun for a visit, but home is where we belong, where our friends are, where your school is, where Daddy works. This is like going to Disneyland, amazing for a few days, but you wouldn't want to live there forever." Sophie considered this logic with her characteristic seriousness. "I guess, but can we come back and visit sometimes?" "We'll see." It was the classic parent non-answer, but Logan genuinely didn't know what would happen after this weekend. Would he and Vanessa maintain any kind of friendship? Would this be a clean break, as promised, with no lingering connection? The uncertainty was more unsettling than he wanted to admit. Claire rescued him by suggesting they explore the library before dinner, and Sophie agreed enthusiastically. Logan returned to his suite and did something he hadn't done in years, called his mother. She answered on the second ring. "Logan, is everything okay? You never call in the middle of the week." "Everything's fine, Mom. I'm away for the weekend with Sophie, at a friend's family estate, and I wanted to hear your voice before I walk into what's probably going to be the most uncomfortable dinner of my life." His mother was quiet for a moment. "A friend's family estate? Logan Pierce, what have you gotten yourself into?" He told her an abbreviated version, left out the payment, the arrangement, the fundamental deception, just said he was helping someone navigate a complicated family situation and had brought Sophie along for an adventure. "This friend," his mother said carefully, She's important to you?
I don't know yet. The honesty surprised him. Maybe. It's complicated. Everything worthwhile is complicated.
Ma, his mother's voice held the particular wisdom of someone who'd raised 3 kids mostly alone after Logan's father died. Just remember, fancy houses and expensive dinners don't make people better or worse. They're just people, same as everyone else. You've got nothing to prove to anyone. Thanks, Mom. And Logan, don't forget who you are in the middle of all that wealth. You're a good man, a good father. That's worth more than anything they've got in their bank accounts. After they hung up, Logan sat on the edge of the enormous bed and tried to center himself. His mother was right. These were just people. Wealthy, powerful, probably intimidating people, but still just human beings with their own insecurities and fears and family dysfunction. He could do this. The cocktail hour approached faster than Logan would have liked. He changed into the outfit Patricia had designated: dark slacks, a crisp shirt, a blazer that managed to be formal without being stuffy. Looking at himself in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. Not because the clothes transformed him, but because the expression on his face was one he hadn't seen in years. Anticipation mixed with apprehension, the look of someone stepping into the unknown. Vanessa met him at the base of the main staircase, having changed into a simple but elegant dress that probably cost what Logan made in a month. She looked him over with an approving eye. "You clean up well." "Patricia's a miracle worker." Logan offered his arm, remembering their practiced gestures. "Ready to start the performance?" "It already started the moment you walked through that door." Vanessa linked her arm through his, and together they walked toward the east drawing room. "But if it helps, my family's going to love you. You're exactly the kind of steady, grounded presence they think I need. Even though it's all fake." "The steadiness isn't fake, Logan. That's real. We're just lying about why you're offering it." The east drawing room was smaller than Logan expected. Intimate, really, for a house this size. Probably only held 20 people comfortably. Currently it held 3. A woman who had to be Vanessa's mother, another woman who shared the same sharp cheekbones, and a man standing by the windows who turned as they entered. Vanessa's father was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that came from decades of commanding boardrooms and making decisions that affected thousands of lives. His eyes, the same gray as Vanessa's, assessed Logan in a single sweep that felt both casual and comprehensive. "So," he said, his voice carrying the slight rasp of expensive whiskey and power. "This is the famous Logan Pierce." Logan felt Vanessa tense slightly beside him, but he stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Haley, thank you for having me and my daughter in your home this weekend." The handshake was firm, testing. "Marcus Hale, and any friend of my daughter's is welcome here." The words were cordial, but the subtext was clear. "I'm reserving judgment." Vanessa's mother moved forward, and Logan saw where Vanessa got her poise. Catherine Hale was elegant in a way that seemed effortless, probably in her early 60s, but could have passed for a decade younger. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were calculating. "Mr. Pierce, how lovely to finally meet you. Vanessa has been quite secretive about your relationship." "Please, call me Logan." He accepted her offered hand, noting that she didn't shake so much as present her hand for acknowledgement. "And I think the secrecy was mutual. We both wanted to see if this was real before involving our families." "How prudent." Catherine's tone suggested she found nothing prudent about keeping a relationship secret. "And you brought your daughter. That's quite a statement." "Sophie is my whole world, Mrs. Hale. If Vanessa and I are going to see if this can work, Sophie needs to be part of that equation." The words came easily because they were true, even if the context was fabricated. The other woman, Vanessa's Aunt Catherine, Logan remembered, spoke up from her position by the fireplace. "A single father. How progressive of you, Vanessa." There was something sharp in the comment, something designed to cut. Vanessa's response was smooth. "Logan's a good father because he's a good man, Aunt Catherine. His marital status doesn't change that." "Of course not, dear. I just meant it's refreshing to see you with someone so grounded in reality." Logan was beginning to understand what Vanessa meant about her family. Every comment had layers. Every observation carried weight beyond its surface meaning. This was a verbal chess game, and he was a novice player facing masters. Marcus Hale handed Logan a glass of whiskey, good whiskey, the kind that burned smooth instead of harsh. Vanessa tells me you own an auto repair shop. That's right, Pierce Auto Repair. Small operation, just me and a part-time helper, but we do good work. Honest work, Marcus said, and Logan couldn't tell if it was approval or condescension. There's value in that. Too many young people today think they can build empires on apps and algorithms. Forget that real value comes from tangible services. I fix things that are broken, Logan said simply. People need their cars to work. I help with that. Not going to change the world, but I sleep well at night. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. Respect, maybe, or at least acknowledgement. That's more than most can say. Catherine Hale directed them to sit, and for the next 45 minutes, Logan navigated the most intense casual conversation of his life. Questions came from all angles, about his business, his background, his late wife, his plans for the future, his intentions toward Vanessa. Each question was polite on the surface, but probing beneath, searching for inconsistencies or red flags. Logan stuck to the truth whenever possible, and to their rehearsed story when necessary. Yes, he was surprised when Vanessa had shown interest. No, he didn't care about her money. He had his own life and his own income. Yes, he understood the complications of their different worlds. No, he wasn't intimidated by her success. He found it attractive that she was passionate about her work. Vanessa's aunt was the most relentless questioner. And what do you two talk about? I imagine your daily lives are quite different. We talk about everything, Vanessa interjected smoothly. Logan has perspective I don't get from people in my usual circles. He's not caught up in the same dynamics, the same power plays. It's refreshing. Refreshing, Catherine repeated, as if testing the word. That's one way to put it. Logan felt his patience wearing thin. With all due respect, ma'am, it seems like you're looking for a reason this doesn't make sense. And I get it. I'm not what you expected. But Vanessa and I connected despite our differences, not because we ignored them. That's actually what makes it work. The room went quiet. Logan realized he'd just challenged one of the family matriarchs in her brother's house on his first night here, and probably torpedoed whatever good impression he might have made. Then Marcus Hale laughed, a genuine surprise sound. Well said, Logan. Catherine does have a habit of interrogating anyone who gets close to the family. You're handling it better than most. Aunt Catherine's expression was unreadable, but she inclined her head slightly. I suppose I deserved that. Forgive an old woman's protectiveness. Vanessa is special. We want to ensure she's with someone who sees that. I see it, Logan said quietly, looking at Vanessa. The script called for affection, for a gaze that suggested deeper feelings. But something in the moment felt less like performance and more like recognition. She's remarkable. Vanessa's expression softened, and for a moment the room fell away. Just the two of them, connected by a truth that existed in the space between lies, that they were both trying to survive complicated situations with dignity intact. Margaret appeared in the doorway. Dinner is served. The dining room they used for informal family dinner was still ridiculously formal, a table that could seat 20 set for 6 with china that probably required insurance. Sophie was already there with Claire, who dressed her in the nice outfit Logan had packed. His daughter's eyes were wide as she took in the setting, but she sat up straight and remembered her manners the way Logan had taught her. Daddy! Sophie brightened when she saw him. Claire showed me the china cabinet, and there are plates that are older than you. That's very old, Logan said solemnly, taking the seat beside her. Vanessa sat across from him, flanked by her parents, with Aunt Catherine and Claire completing the arrangement. Marcus Hale regarded Sophie with the same assessing look he'd given Logan. So you're the young lady who asked if our chandelier was made of diamonds. Sophie's cheeks flushed, but she met his eyes. I'm sorry if that was rude. It was just so pretty, and it sparkled like the diamonds in my picture books. Not rude at all. Creative thinking. Marcus's expression warmed slightly. What else sparkles like diamonds in your picture books? And just like that, Sophie charmed Marcus Hale the same way she charmed everyone, with unfiltered honesty and genuine enthusiasm. She told him about the stars and moons on her pajamas, about how Mr. Elephant's eyes used to sparkle before one fell off, about the glitter in her favorite art project at school. Logan watched his daughter hold court with a billionaire and felt pride swell in his chest. Sophie had no idea about wealth or status or the games everyone else was playing. She just saw a grandfather figure asking her questions and answered with the straightforward joy of a 7-year-old who loved to talk. Catherine Hale, sitting beside Sophie, was equally enchanted.
"And what do you want to be when you grow up, dear?" "I'm not sure yet," Sophie said seriously. "Maybe a veterinarian so I can help sick elephants. Or maybe a mechanic like my daddy, because fixing things is important. Or maybe both. I could fix the cars that bring the sick elephants to the animal hospital." "Why not both?" Catherine agreed. "Women can do anything these days." Dinner was served in courses that seemed endless, each dish more elaborate than the last, each accompanied by a different wine that Logan pretended to appreciate while mostly just sipping water. The conversation flowed around him, touching on business, politics, family gossip, upcoming events. Logan contributed when asked, but mostly observed, learning the dynamics of this family. Marcus was clearly the patriarch, his opinions carrying weight even when unspoken. Catherine Hale was the social orchestrator, guiding conversations and smoothing rough edges. Aunt Catherine was the skeptic, questioning everything with sharp intelligence. And Vanessa was the bridge between worlds, able to speak both languages, comfortable in neither. Halfway through the main course, Marcus turned his attention back to Logan. "Vanessa tells me you're a veteran." "Army?" "Yes, sir. 8 years. Did 2 tours overseas before I got out and started the garage." "What made you leave?" Logan glanced at Sophie, who was engaged in conversation with Catherine about horses. "I wanted to be present for my family. Hard to do that from the other side of the world. And after Emily got sick..." He let the sentence trail off, the implication clear. "I'm sorry for your loss," Marcus said, and for the first time his tone held genuine empathy. Raising a child alone takes courage, especially a daughter. "Sophie makes it easy. She's the best thing I ever did." Logan looked at his daughter, smiling as she explained to Catherine why elephants were better than horses, even though horses were also great. Vanessa spoke up quietly. "It's one of the things I admire most about Logan. He's never once complained about the challenge of single parenthood, just does what needs to be done." "Because complaining doesn't fix anything," Logan said, "and Sophie deserves a father who shows up fully, not one who resents the responsibility." Aunt Catherine set down her fork with a decisive click. "Well, I'll say this. You're certainly different from Vanessa's usual acquaintances. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen, but at least you're interesting." "I'll take interesting over boring," Logan replied. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of courses and conversation. Sophie started to fade around dessert, a towering confection that made her eyes widen before exhaustion claimed her. Logan excused himself to put her to bed, grateful for the reprieve from the intensity of the family dynamic. Claire helped get Sophie into pajamas while Logan turned down the elaborate bedding in the princess bed. Sophie was asleep almost before her head hit the pillow, Mr. Elephant tucked under her arm. "Love you, baby girl," Logan whispered, kissing her forehead. He returned to find the family had moved to yet another room, a library this time, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather furniture that had probably cost more than Logan's truck. Vanessa patted the seat beside her on a sofa, and Logan settled in, hyper-aware of her proximity as she shifted slightly closer, appropriate contact for a couple still finding their rhythm. "Your daughter is delightful," Catherine Hale said warmly. "Very well-mannered. You've done an excellent job with her." "Thank you. I can't take all the credit. Sophie's just naturally sweet." "Nonsense. Children are products of their raising. She's sweet because you've taught her to be kind and curious." Catherine sipped her wine. "It's nice to see Vanessa around children. She's always been so focused on work. We wondered if she'd ever slow down enough to consider a family of her own." Logan felt Vanessa tense beside him. This was the real test, the underlying question about her priorities, her capacity for the family life they clearly valued. "I think," Logan said carefully, "that Vanessa's focus on her work doesn't mean she's incapable of balance. It just means she hasn't found the right reason to seek it. Yet." "And you think you might be that reason?" Marcus asked bluntly. Logan met his gaze steadily. "I think we're figuring it out together. Neither of us is looking to rush into anything. But yeah, I'd like to be that reason. Eventually, if she'll have me." Vanessa's hand found his, their fingers interlacing with practiced ease.
The feeling's mutual. The moment held weight, everyone in the room assessing the sincerity of the exchange. Logan reminded himself it was performance, but Vanessa's hand in his felt real. The warmth of her beside him felt real. The hope in her voice when she'd said mutual felt real. Maybe that was the danger of this arrangement. Not that he'd be unable to pull off the lie, but that the lie would start feeling too much like truth. Aunt Catherine stood, gathering her things. "Well, I'll leave you young people to your evening. Marcus, Catherine, shall we?" The elder Hales took the hint, making their exit with various pleasantries and instructions about tomorrow's schedule. Soon it was just Logan and Vanessa in the library, the quiet settling around them like dust. "You survived," Vanessa said softly. "Barely." Logan leaned back against the sofa, exhaustion hitting him suddenly. "Your aunt doesn't miss anything, does she?" "No one in my family does, but you handled them better than I expected, better than most would." I told the truth whenever I could, made the lies easier. Logan turned to look at her. "Your mom's worried about you." "My mother's always worried about me, usually about the wrong things." Vanessa's tone was weary. "She wants me married, settled, producing heirs to carry on the family legacy. Doesn't matter that I'm running a multi-billion-dollar company. That's just something I do until I fulfill my real purpose." "That's archaic." "That's my family." Vanessa stood, moving to the window that overlooked the dark gardens. "They love me. I know they do. But they love an idea of who I should be more than who I actually am." Logan joined her at the window, standing close enough that their reflections merged in the glass. "Then why are we here? Why perpetuate their fantasy?" "Because proving them right, that I'm incapable of human connection, gives them ammunition to question my leadership. The company transition isn't just ceremonial, Logan. There are board members who think I'm too young, too inexperienced, too cold to lead effectively. If my own family doesn't believe I can balance work and life, why would the board? So you're here to prove you're human." "I'm here to prove I'm complete." Vanessa's reflection met his in the glass. "That I have dimensions beyond spreadsheets and strategy meetings. That I'm capable of the emotional intelligence required to lead people, not just manage assets." Logan was quiet for a moment, processing the weight she was carrying. "That's a lot of pressure for one weekend." "Yes, and I'm supposed to be evidence of your emotional intelligence? You're supposed to be evidence that I can let someone in, that I can trust and be trusted, that beneath the CEO exterior is someone capable of genuine connection." Vanessa's laugh was brittle. "Ironic, given that this entire connection is fabricated." "Not entirely," Logan said before he could stop himself. "I mean, we barely know each other, but this conversation, this isn't fake. The fact that you're telling me the truth about the pressure you're under, that's real." Vanessa turned from the window to face him directly. "Why are you really here, Logan? And don't say the money. That's part of it, but there's something else. I can tell." Logan considered lying, deflecting, but the intimacy of the moment, the exhaustion of maintaining facades all evening, the genuine curiosity in her eyes, it all conspired to pull the truth out of him. "Because for 3 years, I've been stuck," he admitted, "going through the motions, work, parent, sleep, repeat. I love Sophie more than life itself, but I've been so focused on being enough for her that I forgot to want anything for myself. And then you walked into my garage offering me this insane proposition, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd said yes to something uncertain, something that scared me. I've been playing it safe so long I forgot what it felt like to take a risk." Vanessa's expression was unreadable. "So I'm your risk? This weekend is my risk, stepping outside my comfort zone, seeing how the other half lives, proving to myself that I can still adapt, still perform, still be something other than just Sophie's dad and the guy who fixes your transmission." Logan ran a hand through his hair. "That probably sounds pathetic." "It sounds honest." Vanessa's voice was soft. "And honesty is rarer than you'd think in my world." They stood in the library, the house settling into nighttime quiet around them, two people from different worlds finding unexpected common ground in their mutual desire to be seen as more than their circumstances defined them. "We should get some sleep," Vanessa said finally. "Tomorrow's the garden party. About 100 people, most of whom will have opinions about you." "Looking forward to it," Logan said dryly. Vanessa smiled, genuine, tired, appreciative. For what it's worth, you were perfect tonight. My family actually liked you, even Aunt Catherine, and she doesn't like anyone. Good to know I haven't blown our cover on day one. They walked together through the quiet house, up the grand staircase, to the point where the east and west wings diverged. Vanessa hesitated, her hand on the banister. Thank you, Logan, for tonight, for all of this. Thank me when the weekend's over and we've both survived. He surprised himself by reaching out, squeezing her hand briefly. Get some rest, Vanessa. Tomorrow we do it all again. She squeezed back, then disappeared down the west corridor. Logan made his way to his suite, checked on Sophie one more time, still sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the complexity of the world her father was navigating, and finally collapsed into the enormous bed. He should have fallen asleep immediately, exhausted from the emotional labor of the evening. Instead, he lay awake, replaying moments from dinner. The way Vanessa's hand had fit so naturally in his. The genuine warmth in her mother's concern. The weight of Marcus Hale's assessment. The dawning realization that this performance was going to require more from him than he'd anticipated. Not more acting, but more honesty. More vulnerability. More willingness to blur the lines between what was real and what was pretend. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. You holding up? That family would intimidate anyone. Logan typed back, survive dinner. Tomorrow's going to be worse, isn't it? 100 people judging you instead of 5. But you got this. Stay authentic. They can smell bullshit a mile away. Great. No pressure. You faced worse than rich people at a garden party. Just remember, they're all playing roles too. Yours just happens to come with a paycheck. Logan set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling, ornate crown molding barely visible in the darkness. Marcus was right. This weekend was just another mission. Different terrain, different objectives, but fundamentally the same as every challenge he'd faced. Assess the situation, adapt to circumstances, execute the plan, extract safely. The problem was, he was starting to care about the mission parameters changing, starting to wonder what would happen if the performance became something more, starting to feel things for Vanessa that definitely weren't part of the contract they'd agreed to. That was dangerous territory, the kind that led to complications neither of them needed. But as sleep finally claimed him, Logan's last conscious thought wasn't about danger or complications. It was about the way Vanessa had looked at him in the library when she'd asked why he was really there, the way she'd actually listened to his answer, the way she'd called his honesty rare and valuable. For someone who'd spent 3 years feeling invisible except in his role as father and mechanic, being seen, really seen, by someone like Vanessa felt like water after years in the desert. Even if it was just for a weekend. Even if it wasn't real. Or maybe especially because of those things, it mattered. Outside, the estate settled into silence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new performances, new tests of their ability to sell a relationship that existed only on paper. But tonight, in the darkness of an unfamiliar room in an unfamiliar world, Logan Pierce allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Anticipation for what might come next, regardless of where it led. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through windows Logan had forgotten to close, flooding the suite with golden light that felt deliberately orchestrated. He woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where he was until the sheer scale of the room reminded him. The Hale estate, day 2 of a performance that was becoming harder to separate from reality. A soft knock preceded Sophie bursting through the door, already dressed and vibrating with excitement. Daddy? Claire says there's a breakfast buffet with pancakes shaped like animals, and we can eat outside by the fountain, and there are swans. Logan sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Swans, huh? Real ones? Real ones. She showed me from the window. Can we go feed them, please? Claire appeared in the doorway, looking apologetic. Sorry for the invasion. She woke up at 6 and has been asking about the swans for 40 minutes. Don't apologize. This is exactly what I wanted for her. Excitement, adventure, feeling like a kid at the best summer camp ever. Logan swung his legs out of bed, acutely aware he was wearing only the t-shirt and boxers he'd slept in. Give me 15 minutes to make myself presentable. The breakfast setup on the terrace was indeed spectacular. Tables arranged under a pergola draped in flowering vines. Servers in crisp uniforms offering everything from fresh pastries to made-to-order omelets. Sophie was entranced by the swan-shaped fountain in the center of the garden, where actual swans glided across the water with regal indifference. Vanessa was already there, dressed in casual elegance that probably took an hour to achieve, but looked effortlessly thrown together. She brightened when she saw them approaching, and Logan noticed the reaction seemed genuine rather than performed. "Good morning," she said, her smile encompassing both of them. "Did you sleep well?" "The bed was so soft I thought I was sleeping on clouds," Sophie announced, claiming the seat beside Vanessa with the comfortable familiarity of a child who'd already decided someone was safe. "Do you sleep on clouds every night?" "Most nights, yes. Though sometimes I barely sleep at all because work keeps my mind too busy." Vanessa helped Sophie navigate the buffet selection, pointing out options while explaining what various pastries contained. The interaction was natural, unforced, and Logan found himself watching them with something warm settling in his chest. Marcus and Catherine joined them shortly after, along with Vanessa's brother, Alexander, who'd arrived that morning and carried himself with the same controlled confidence as his sister. He was younger than Vanessa by a few years, with their father's height and their mother's sharp features. "So you're the mechanic," Alexander said, shaking Logan's hand with a grip that tested boundaries without quite crossing into aggression. "Vanessa's kept you remarkably secret. Makes a man curious what she's hiding." "Just wanted to see if it was real before making it public," Logan replied evenly. "No point subjecting either of us to family scrutiny if we weren't going to last past a few dates." "And now? You think you'll last?" The question was pointed, searching. Logan glanced at Vanessa, who was engaged in showing Sophie how to properly feed swans without getting bitten. "I think we've got a shot, if we can navigate the complicated parts." "The complicated parts being our completely different lifestyles and social circles?" Alexander's tone was conversational, but his eyes were sharp. "Or the fact that you've got a kid and my sister's married to her company?" "All of the above." Logan met his gaze steadily. "But complicated doesn't mean impossible. Just means we have to work harder than most." Alexander studied him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Fair enough. Just know, Vanessa doesn't let people in easily. If you're in, you matter. Don't waste that." The warning was clear, protective brotherhood dressed in casual conversation. Logan understood it, respected it even. Wasn't planning on it. The garden party started at noon, and the transformation of the estate was remarkable. What had been quiet gardens yesterday became a precisely orchestrated social event. White tents appeared on the expansive lawn, bars were set up at strategic intervals, and servers circulated with trays of champagne and elaborate hors d'oeuvres. Cars began arriving, expensive cars driven by expensive people wearing expensive clothes and carrying the weight of old money and older expectations. Logan had changed into what Patricia labeled smart casual, tailored chinos, a linen button-down, loafers that cost more than his monthly insurance payment. He felt like an imposter, but his reflection showed someone who could blend into this world if he didn't open his mouth and reveal his origins. Vanessa found him on the terrace, adjusting his collar with the nervous energy of someone preparing for battle. She looked stunning in a sundress that probably had a designer name Logan wouldn't recognize, her hair pulled back to reveal elegant earrings that caught the light. "Stop fidgeting," she said gently, stilling his hands with her own. "You look perfect." "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "Everyone here is playing dress-up. You're just honest enough to admit it." She kept hold of one of his hands, her thumb tracing absent patterns on his palm. "Ready to meet 100 people who'll judge us within 30 seconds? Can't wait." Logan's voice was dry, but he squeezed her hand. "What's the play here? How do we work the room?" "We circulate together initially. I introduce you to key people, board members, family friends, business associates who matter. You're charming, genuine yourself. Around 2 o'clock, we separate. You'll probably get pulled into conversations with some of the men about business or sports or whatever men talk about when they're assessing new additions to the circle. That's when the real test happens. The real test being whether I can hold my own without you there to guide me. The real test being whether they believe we're real when we're not performing as a unit." Vanessa's expression was serious. "My mother will orchestrate separating us. She'll want to see if our body language changes when we're apart, if we seek each other out naturally, if we look diminished or relieved to have distance." Logan processed this level of scrutiny and felt his anxiety spike. "Your family really does think of everything." They've had decades of practice reading people. It's how they've maintained power and position. Vanessa stepped closer, her free hand coming to rest on his chest. To anyone watching, it would look like an intimate moment between lovers. Logan, listen to me. You don't have to be anyone but yourself. That's enough. That's more than enough. What if myself isn't impressive enough for this crowd? Then they're not as smart as they think they are. The conviction in her voice surprised him. You've built a business from nothing, raised a daughter alone, served your country. You have more real substance than half the people here who inherited their worth and spend their days protecting it instead of creating anything meaningful. The passionate defense landed somewhere tender in Logan's chest. When was the last time someone had championed him like that? Seen value in him beyond his utility? A throat cleared behind them. Catherine Hale stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Guests are beginning to arrive. Vanessa, dear, you should be by the entrance to greet them. Logan, perhaps you join me for a moment. I'd love to show you the rose garden. It was happening already. The separation, the test. Vanessa's eyes met Logan's briefly, a flash of apology mixed with encouragement. Go, Logan said quietly. I'll be fine. He followed Catherine through the manicured gardens, aware that this was exactly what Vanessa had warned him about. The matriarch wanted him alone, wanted to probe without witnesses, wanted to determine if he was genuine or simply a skilled actor. The rose garden was extensive, hundreds of varieties in full bloom creating a riot of color and fragrance. Catherine walked slowly, trailing her fingers along the petals with practiced gentleness. These were my mother's passion, she said conversationally. She spent hours here every day, nurturing them, talking to them. My father thought it was frivolous, but he indulged her because he understood everyone needs something that's purely theirs. Logan sensed the conversation had layers he was meant to interpret. They're beautiful. Sophie would love this. Your daughter is delightful, unspoiled despite being raised without a mother's influence. Catherine paused by a particularly stunning yellow rose. That speaks well of your parenting. I do my best. Some days that's barely adequate, but Sophie's forgiving. Children often are, until they're not. Catherine turned to face him fully. Let me be direct, Logan. I've seen many people try to attach themselves to my family over the years. Most want access, connections, money. Some are subtler about it than others, but the motivation is always transparent eventually. And you think that's what I'm doing? I think you're an unexpected choice for my daughter, which means either Vanessa has finally found someone who sees her for who she is, or you're more sophisticated than you appear and playing a very long game. Catherine's gaze was penetrating. I'm going to ask you something, and I want complete honesty. Can you give me that? Logan's heart rate accelerated, but he kept his expression neutral. I can try. Do you love my daughter? The question hung in the perfumed air between them. Logan could feel the weight of it, the trap embedded in any answer. Say yes too quickly, and he'd seem dishonest. They'd only been together for 3 months. Say no, and he'd confirm Catherine's suspicions that this was merely transactional. I don't know yet, he said finally, choosing honesty over strategy. I care about her, a lot, more than I expected to when we first met. But love? That's a big word, Mrs. Hale. I've been in love before, real foundation-shaking love with my late wife. What I feel for Vanessa is different, newer, more complicated because of our different worlds. But it could become love. I'm open to that possibility. That's the best answer I can give you. Catherine studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. That's the most honest answer anyone has ever given me about their feelings for one of my children. Most people either declare eternal love or carefully calculated interest. You've done neither. Because both would be lies at this point. Logan felt like he was navigating a minefield blindfolded. I can't promise you I'm the right person for Vanessa long term, but I can promise you I'm here now, present and genuine, trying to figure out if we fit together despite the obvious obstacles. And if you don't, if the obstacles prove too much, then we'll end it honestly and respectfully. But we owe it to ourselves to try. Vanessa deserves someone willing to try. Logan paused, then added, and so do I. After 3 years of just surviving, I deserve to try living again. Something in Catherine's expression softened. You're right. You both deserve that chance. She linked her arm through his, guiding him back toward the party. I'm going to tell you something in confidence, Logan. Vanessa has spent her entire life trying to prove she's worthy of her position, her success, her place in this family. She's never understood that we love her not for what she accomplishes, but for who she is beneath all the armor. If you can help her see that, if you can be someone safe enough that she stops performing even here, in her own family, then you'll have done something none of us have managed in 30 years. Logan absorbed this, understanding the gift Catherine was giving him, insight into Vanessa's deepest vulnerability, permission to pursue something real beyond the performance they'd agreed to. It was manipulation of a kind, but gentle, aimed at her daughter's happiness rather than her own agenda. I'll try, he said simply. But Vanessa's walls exist for reasons. They won't come down just because I'm patient. No, Catherine agreed. But they might come down if you prove those walls aren't necessary with you, that you can be trusted with her unguarded self. They emerged from the rose garden to find the party in full swing. Easily 100 people scattered across the lawn and terraces, conversations flowing with the ease of people who'd known each other for decades. Logan spotted Vanessa immediately. She was in conversation with 3 older men in blazers, her posture perfect, her smile professional, but her eyes were scanning the crowd, searching. When she found him, something in her expression relaxed. The change was subtle, probably invisible to everyone except someone watching for it. But Logan saw it, and from the slight nod Catherine gave, she'd seen it too. Go, Catherine said quietly. She needs you more than these people do. Logan made his way across the lawn, intercepting a server for 2 glasses of champagne. He approached Vanessa's conversation circle with the confidence of someone who belonged there, even though his internal monologue was screaming that he absolutely did not. Logan, Vanessa's greeting was warm, her hand reaching for his automatically. Perfect timing. I was just telling James, Robert, and Thomas about your garage. They were fascinated by the concept of actually working with your hands. The 3 men assessed him with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. James, tall, silver-haired, expensive watch, extended a hand. James Morrison. I sit on Hale Industries board. Vanessa speaks very highly of you. Hopefully not too highly, Logan said, shaking hands with each of them. I'm just a mechanic, nothing fancy. But just a mechanic who built his own business from scratch, Vanessa interjected smoothly, and who's managed to raise a remarkable daughter while doing it. I'd say that's fairly impressive. What branch did you serve in? Robert asked, his military bearing evident despite civilian clothes. Army, 8 years, 2 deployments. Got out when my daughter was born. Wanted to be present for her growing up. Robert nodded approvingly. Smart choice. Too many men think deployment after deployment makes them better fathers. It just makes them strangers to their own kids. The conversation flowed from there. Military service, the challenges of small business ownership, the economy, sports. Logan discovered that stripped of their wealth and status, these men weren't so different from the guys he knew in Riverside. They had opinions, biases, areas of expertise, and ignorance. The money just gave them platforms to broadcast everything more widely. Around 1:30, Marcus Hale materialized with several other men in tow. Logan, got a minute? Some gentlemen want to pick your brain about classic car restoration. It was the separation Vanessa had predicted. She squeezed his hand briefly, a gesture of reassurance and farewell. I'll find you later. Logan let himself be absorbed into a conversation about vintage Mustangs and Corvettes, restoration techniques, the market for classic cars. He contributed where he could, asked intelligent questions where he couldn't, and generally held his own among men whose garages probably housed 6-figure collector vehicles. But part of his attention stayed on Vanessa, tracking her movement through the party even while engaged elsewhere. He noticed Catherine pulling her into conversation with a group of women, noticed Alexander introducing her to someone young and ambitious-looking, noticed the way she maintained perfect composure even when obviously uncomfortable. And he noticed when a man in his 50s, handsome in that distinguished way that came with age and money, approached her with too familiar ease. The man's hand lingered on her arm longer than appropriate. Vanessa's smile became fixed, her body language shifting to create distance without making a scene. Logan excused himself from the car conversation and made his way across the lawn with purposeful casualness. As he approached, he heard the tail end of the man's pitch. Just dinner, Vanessa. For old time's sake. We were good together before you got so focused on work. Richard, I've told you. Vanessa's voice was strained, professional courtesy warring with clear discomfort. Is there a problem here? Logan's arrival was perfectly timed, his hand settling on Vanessa's waist with possessive ease. Sorry I got pulled away, sweetheart. Car talk ran long. Vanessa's relief was palpable as she leaned into him slightly. Logan, this is Richard Thornton. We dated briefly years ago. Richard, this is Logan Pierce, my boyfriend. Richard's assessment was instant and dismissive. The mechanic. Yes, I'd heard rumors. Quite the departure from your usual type, Vanessa. My usual type being men who can't take no for an answer? Vanessa's voice carried an edge Logan had never heard. Or men who think their money and connections entitle them to whatever they want? I'm simply suggesting that you might be slumming out of some misguided rebellion. Careful, Logan interrupted, his voice pleasant, but his eyes hard. You're about 3 words away from insulting the woman I care about and the relationship we've built. I don't think you want to go there. Well, Richard's expression shifted through several emotions. Surprise, calculation, grudging respect. I see. Well, Vanessa certainly seems to have found someone protective. I found someone who respects boundaries, Vanessa corrected. Something you never mastered. Now, if you'll excuse us, we were just heading to see how the afternoon activities are progressing. She steered them away, her hand tight on Logan's arm. Once they were out of earshot, she exhaled shakily. Thank you. Richard has been trying to rekindle things for months. Doesn't seem to understand that no means no when you're wealthy and connected. Want me to have a more direct conversation with him? Logan was only half joking. No, your presence was enough. He's not dangerous, just entitled and persistent. Vanessa paused in a quiet corner of the garden, gathering herself. This is my world, Logan. Men like Richard who think women are acquisitions to be negotiated for. Families who measure worth in net value and social connections. Parties where every conversation is a transaction disguised as pleasantry. Sounds exhausting. It is. Vanessa looked up at him, vulnerability replacing the professional mask she'd worn all afternoon. You want to know the truth? I hate these events, hate the performance, the judgment, the constant assessment. But they're necessary, part of maintaining position and power. Logan studied her face, seeing past the carefully applied makeup to the tired woman beneath. You don't have to perform with me. You know that, right? When it's just us, you can drop all this. Can I? The question held genuine uncertainty. Even you're here as part of a performance, Logan. This whole weekend is choreographed. What's real and what's for show? It was the question Logan had been avoiding asking himself. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that was entirely unscripted. This is real. Right now. You being honest about hating your own party, me actually giving a damn that you're uncomfortable, that's not performance. Vanessa's eyes searched his face, looking for deception or calculation. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy something, because she leaned forward, her forehead resting briefly against his chest. The gesture was small, private, and more intimate than any of their practiced touches. I'm glad you're here, she whispered. Me too. They stayed like that for a moment, hidden in the garden while the party continued without them. Then Vanessa straightened, her mask sliding back into place with visible effort. We should get back. People will notice if we're gone too long. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Logan met board members and family friends, business associates, and distant relatives. Each conversation was a subtle test, measuring his intelligence, his background, his suitability for Vanessa. He passed some tests and failed others, but through it all, he remained himself. Honest, direct, occasionally out of his depth, but never pretending otherwise. Around 4, he found Sophie with Claire and a group of other children playing an elaborate game involving the fountain and several rubber ducks. His daughter was soaked, laughing, completely unconcerned with the wealthy families watching their children interact with this mechanic's kid. Daddy! Sophie ran to him, dripping water. We're racing ducks. Mine is named Sparkles, and she's winning. Logan scooped her up despite the wet, her joy infectious. Sparkles is clearly the superior duck. Are you having fun? The best fun. Claire says after the duck race we can have ice cream and there's 17 different flavors. 17? That's impressive. Logan set her down, crouching to her level. You being good for Claire? The absolute best, Claire confirmed, joining them. She's been wonderful, making friends, sharing toys, very polite. You should be proud. Pride swelled in Logan's chest. Whatever else happened this weekend, Sophie was thriving. That alone made it worthwhile. He rejoined the adult party to find Vanessa deep in conversation with someone who had to be a board member based on his self-important bearing. She caught Logan's eye across the crowd, and something passed between them. A shared acknowledgement of the performance they were maintaining, the exhaustion they both felt, the relief that it would end eventually. Dinner that night was the formal birthday celebration. 200 guests, black tie, the kind of event that got covered in society pages. Logan dressed in the midnight blue tuxedo that transformed him into someone he barely recognized. Patricia had been right. The fit was so perfect, it stopped feeling like a costume and started feeling like armor. Sophie had been fed earlier and put to bed, exhausted from her day of playing. Logan checked on her before heading downstairs, finding her sprawled across the princess bed with Mr. Elephant, completely content. The ballroom, because of course the estate had a ballroom, was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, live orchestra, tables set with more silverware than any reasonable meal required. Guests arrived in gowns and tuxedos, jewels that probably required insurance riders, and the casual confidence of people who attended events like this regularly. Logan found Vanessa in the receiving line with her family, greeting guests as they arrived. She wore a gown that defied description, elegant, sophisticated, the kind of dress that would be in magazines tomorrow. But when she saw him, her eyes lit up in a way that had nothing to do with the dress and everything to do with genuine relief. "You look incredible," she said when he reached her. "You too. Though I feel like I should be parking cars instead of attending as a guest." "Stop." Her reprimand was gentle. "You belong here as much as anyone." Dinner was a production. Multiple courses, paired wines, speeches honoring Marcus Hale's achievements and contributions. Logan sat at Vanessa's table, surrounded by family and close friends, navigating the silverware situation by watching others and following their lead. Alexander sat across from him, having brought a date who seemed pleasant but overwhelmed. "How are you holding up?" he asked Logan during a break between courses.
Still standing. That's something. You're doing better than most would. My father likes you, by the way, told me earlier that you've got substance. Alexander's tone suggested this was high praise indeed. "I'll take it." Logan glanced at Vanessa, who was engaged in conversation with an older woman dripping in diamonds. "Your sister's incredible at this. Knows exactly what to say, how to work the room. She's had a lifetime of practice, but it costs her." Alexander followed Logan's gaze. "You know what I've never seen before? Vanessa looking genuinely happy at one of these events. Usually, she's just enduring them. Tonight she keeps looking at you like you're her escape route." Logan processed this, understanding the responsibility embedded in the observation. What if I can't be that for her long term? What if this doesn't work outside of weekends at estates? Then at least you'll have shown her what it feels like to have someone in her corner for once. That's more than most of her relationships have offered. Alexander raised his wine glass slightly. "Just don't hurt her, mechanic. She's tougher than she looks, but she's not invincible." After dinner, dancing began. The orchestra played classical pieces and elegant waltzes, nothing like the music Logan was accustomed to. He'd warned Vanessa he couldn't dance, but she just smiled and said she'd teach him. Now, on the dance floor, surrounded by couples who'd probably taken lessons, Logan let Vanessa guide him through basic steps. Her hand in his, her other hand on his shoulder, their bodies close enough to feel intimate without crossing propriety lines. "You're doing fine," she murmured. "Stop thinking so hard." Hard not to when I'm surrounded by people who actually know what they're doing. No one's watching us that closely. They're all too busy with their own performances. Vanessa's breath was warm against his ear. "Besides, I like that you're a little clumsy. Makes you human. As opposed to all these perfect people. As opposed to everyone I usually date who's been taught to waltz before they could walk." She pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. "You know what I realized today? During the garden party, watching you interact with everyone from board members to my old boyfriends who can't take hints, you never once tried to be someone you're not. You were just you. Honest, direct,
sometimes out of your depth, but never fake about it. Didn't seem like I had much choice. These people can spot a fake from across the room. Most people here are fakes themselves. They've just been doing it longer. Vanessa's expression was serious. I'm not like them, Logan. I know I look like I fit perfectly into this world, but I don't. I never have. And meeting someone who also doesn't fit but doesn't apologize for it? That's what? Logan prompted when she didn't finish. Rare. Important. Maybe exactly what I needed. She rested her head against his shoulder, abandoning the formal distance of the waltz for something more intimate. Thank you for being here. For being you. For making this weekend bearable. Logan's arms tightened around her slightly, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. This was supposed to be simple. A transaction, a performance, a means to an end. But somewhere between last night's library conversation and this moment on the dance floor, something had shifted. The lines had blurred. The performance had started feeling too much like truth. And that terrified him more than anything else this weekend had thrown at him, because Logan knew what happened when you let yourself care about someone from a different world. You got hurt. You discovered that love wasn't enough to bridge fundamental differences in lifestyle and expectation. You ended up alone trying to explain to your daughter why someone who seemed perfect wasn't staying. But even knowing all that, Logan couldn't quite bring himself to step back, to reestablish the professional distance their arrangement called for. Because Vanessa felt right in his arms. Because her vulnerability was genuine and her trust was precious. Because for the first time in 3 years, Logan wanted something for himself beyond just being a good father and a reliable mechanic. He wanted this. Wanted her. Wanted the possibility of something real emerging from this elaborate fiction. The song ended, transitioning into another. Couples shifted and changed partners, but Logan and Vanessa stayed together, swaying to the music in their own private world. Across the ballroom, Catherine Hale watched them with knowing eyes and a small smile. Marcus raised his glass slightly in Logan's direction. Acknowledgement or approval, Logan couldn't tell. Alexander danced with his date but kept glancing over, protective instincts on alert. And Logan realized that whatever happened when this weekend ended, whatever complications arose from blurred lines and genuine feelings, he'd already crossed a threshold he couldn't uncross. He cared about Vanessa, cared about making her smile, easing her burden, being the steady presence she needed. The question was whether caring would be enough when Monday came and they returned to their separate worlds. Whether $50,000 would feel like adequate compensation for the risk he was taking with his carefully guarded heart. Whether he'd leave this estate richer in money but poorer in peace, having glimpsed a life and a connection he couldn't maintain. But those were tomorrow's problems. Tonight, he had Vanessa in his arms, music in the air, and the strange alchemy of a fake relationship that was starting to feel more authentic than any real one he'd had in years. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tomorrow, they'd have to navigate family brunch and the final act of their performance. Tomorrow, the weekend would end and real life would resume. But tonight, Logan let himself have this. The dance, the connection, the possibility that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Even if those places were bought and paid for, even if the connection had an expiration date, even if his heart was going to pay a price his bank account would never compensate for. The music played on, but Logan barely heard it anymore. All his focus had narrowed to the woman in his arms, the way she fit against him like she'd been designed for this exact purpose, the warmth of her breath against his neck as they swayed together in their private bubble amid 200 guests. When the song finally ended, Vanessa pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his face with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Walk with me. I need air." They slipped through the French doors onto a terrace that overlooked the gardens, now illuminated with strategic lighting that made everything look like a movie set. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of roses and jasmine. Behind them, the party continued without pause, but out here, they were alone. Vanessa leaned against the stone balustrade, her elegant gown pooling around her like water. "Tomorrow morning, this all ends. We have brunch with immediate family, you and Sophie get in the car, and we go back to being..." What exactly? The question Logan had been avoiding all weekend. Strangers who shared a business arrangement? Is that what we are? Vanessa turned to face him fully. Because it doesn't feel like that anymore. At least not to me. Logan's heart hammered against his ribs. This was dangerous territory, admitting to feelings that complicated everything. No, it doesn't feel like that to me either.
Then what does it feel like? He moved closer, drawn by something he couldn't name and didn't want to resist. Like I've been sleepwalking for 3 years and you woke me up. Like I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something just for myself, not because it was practical or necessary or the responsible choice. Like this weekend has been the most terrifying and exhilarating thing I've done since Sophie was born. Vanessa's eyes glistened in the low light.
I hired you to play a role, Logan, to be my buffer against family pressure and corporate politics. But somewhere between the garage and right now, you became something else entirely. You became someone I actually need, not for show, but for real. Vanessa, let me finish. Her voice wavered slightly. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, protecting myself from people who wanted access to my money, my connections, my family name. I learned to separate professional from personal, to keep everyone at arm's length, to never let anyone see the parts of me that weren't polished and perfect. And then you showed up in your oil-stained work shirt, completely unimpressed by everything I've spent my life achieving, and somehow you slipped past every defense I had. Logan reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of repetition. I'm a mechanic from Riverside with a 7-year-old daughter and a struggling business. What could I possibly offer someone like you beyond one weekend of playing pretend? Everything I actually need and nothing I thought I wanted. Vanessa's smile was sad, beautiful. You offer honesty in a world of calculated moves, presence without agenda, the kind of steady reliability that can't be bought or manufactured. And you make me feel like I don't have to be perfect to be worthy of your time. The confession hung between them, raw and real. Logan knew he should step back, reestablish boundaries, remember that this was temporary, and feelings were complications neither of them could afford. But instead, he found himself cupping her face with his free hand, his thumb tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. What do we do with this? He asked quietly. How do we navigate the fact that we've developed real feelings in a fake situation? I don't know. Vanessa leaned into his touch. But I know I don't want tomorrow to be goodbye. I know that when I think about you leaving, going back to your life without any connection to mine, something in my chest hurts in a way I haven't felt in years. Maybe ever. Logan's resolve, already weakened, crumbled completely. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, to remind him this wasn't part of their arrangement. But Vanessa met him halfway, her lips finding his in a kiss that was nothing like the brief performative one they'd shared earlier for her aunt's benefit. This kiss was searching, honest, tinged with desperation and hope in equal measure. Her hand slid up to his shoulders, his arm wrapped around her waist, and for a moment the world consisted of nothing but this connection, this acknowledgement of something neither had planned for but both desperately wanted. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Vanessa rested her forehead against his. That wasn't in the contract. No, it definitely wasn't. Logan's voice was rough. We should probably talk about what happens next. We should. But neither of them moved, content to stay in this moment a little longer before reality intruded. A discreet cough interrupted them. Margaret stood in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. Apologies for the interruption, Miss Hale. Your mother is asking for you. Something about the birthday toast. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly, gathering herself. Of course. Tell her I'll be right there. She turned back to Logan as Margaret retreated. We'll talk tomorrow, after brunch, before you leave. I need to figure out what I'm asking for before I ask you for it. Vanessa, please. I need to think clearly, and I can't do that when you're looking at me like that. She squeezed his hand once more, then slipped back into the ballroom, leaving Logan alone on the terrace with his turbulent thoughts and racing heart. He stood there for long minutes, trying to process what had just happened. The kiss, the confession, the admission that this weekend had become something neither of them could simply walk away from without consequence. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Saw you two disappear. You good, brother? Logan typed back, honestly, I have no idea. That's what happens when you catch feelings you weren't supposed to catch. Want me to come up there and knock some sense into you? Would it help? Probably not. But I'd feel better. Call me tomorrow when you're home. You're going to need to talk this through. Logan pocketed his phone and returned to the ballroom, where the party had reached its peak. Marcus Hale was giving a speech, thanking everyone for coming, for their friendship and support over the years. Vanessa stood beside her father, poised and perfect. But when her eyes found Logan's across the room, something in her expression softened. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More dancing, more champagne, more conversations with people whose names Logan would never remember. But through it all, he was hyper-aware of Vanessa. Her laugh across the room, the way she moved through the crowd with practiced grace, the occasional glance she sent his way that held promises and questions in equal measure. Around midnight, guests began departing. Logan found himself saying goodnight to people he'd just met, accepting handshakes and well wishes, playing the role of Vanessa's boyfriend with an ease that no longer felt like acting. Because somewhere in the past 48 hours, the role had become reality, at least for him. He checked on Sophie one last time before heading to his own suite. She was sleeping peacefully, Mr. Elephant clutched tight, her face relaxed and happy. Whatever complications tomorrow brought, at least she'd had a magical weekend. That was worth something. In his suite, Logan changed out of the tuxedo and lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone showed 12:47 a.m. In less than 12 hours, they'd have family brunch, and then the weekend would officially end. The car would take him and Sophie back to Riverside, back to the garage and the apartment, and the life that suddenly felt impossibly small. But more than that, in less than 12 hours, he'd have to figure out what he was willing to risk for the possibility of something real with Vanessa. Long-distance relationships were complicated enough without adding in the massive wealth disparity, the difference in lifestyles, the challenge of blending a 7-year-old into a world of corporate demands and constant travel. A soft knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Logan opened the door to find Vanessa standing there in silk pajamas and a robe, her hair down, makeup removed, looking more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. "I couldn't sleep," she said simply, "and I didn't want to wait until tomorrow to have this conversation." Logan stepped aside, letting her in. She moved to the window, looking out at the gardens bathed in moonlight. "I've been thinking about logistics," she began, "about how this could actually work if we wanted it to. I travel constantly, which means I could arrange to be in your area more frequently. Not moving there, I can't relocate my entire operation, but being present enough that we could build something real." "And what about Sophie?" Logan asked the question that mattered most. "She's already lost one important woman in her life. I can't let her get attached to you if there's a chance this doesn't work out." "I know. Which is why we'd take it incredibly slowly. Casual visits at first, building a friendship with her before anything deeper. No promises we can't keep, no false hope, just seeing if this can work in the real world the way it's worked this weekend." Vanessa turned to face him. "I'm not asking for a commitment, Logan. I'm asking for a chance." Logan crossed the room to stand beside her. "You know what scares me most? Not the distance or the complications, or even integrating our wildly different lives. What scares me is how easy it would be to fall completely in love with you. How close I already am to that edge. Because if I fall and this doesn't work, I don't know if I'd recover a second time." Vanessa's hand found his in the darkness. "I'm scared too. Terrified, actually. I've never been good at relationships, never let anyone close enough to hurt me. But the idea of walking away from you tomorrow, of never exploring what this could be, scares me more than the risk of getting hurt." "So we try." Logan's voice was rough with emotion. "We take it slow. We protect Sophie. We figure out the logistics, and we see if lightning strikes twice." "We try." Vanessa's smile was tremulous, hopeful, with complete honesty this time. No more performances, no more carefully constructed narratives. Just two people figuring out if they can build something real from very unreal beginnings. Logan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, feeling her relax into his embrace. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet of the night, both understanding that they were choosing something difficult and uncertain over something safe and predictable. "Stay," Logan said quietly. "Not for anything inappropriate. Just stay. I don't want to spend our last night here alone." Vanessa nodded against his chest. They moved to the bed, lying down together on top of the covers. Logan pulled a throw blanket over them, and Vanessa curled into his side, her head on his shoulder, her hand over his heart. "Tell me about Emily,"
she said softly. If you want to. I should know about the woman who came before me. Logan was quiet for a moment, marshaling memories.
She was my high school sweetheart, the only person who believed I could make something of myself when I got out of the military. We got married young, had Sophie young, and we were happy. Not perfect, but genuinely happy. When she got sick, it was sudden. Aggressive cancer that didn't respond to treatment. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. And I watched the strongest person I knew get weaker every day until she was just gone. I'm so sorry. The worst part was watching Sophie try to understand. She was 4, and she kept asking when Mommy was coming home. I didn't know how to explain that Mommy was never coming home. Logan's voice cracked slightly. For a long time, I was angry. At fate, at the universe, at myself for not being able to fix it. And then I realized Sophie needed me to be present, not angry. So I learned to live with the grief instead of fighting it. Vanessa was silent for a moment, processing. I can't replace her. I wouldn't even try. I'm not asking you to. Emily will always be Sophie's mother, always be part of our story, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for someone new, someone who understands that loving me means accepting that I come with history and a daughter and complications. Logan pressed a kiss to the top of her head. You don't have to compete with a memory, Vanessa. You just have to be yourself. I can do that, she whispered. Finally, something I'm actually equipped for. They talked through the night about childhoods and dreams deferred, about the pressures of expectations and the weight of responsibility, about fears and hopes, and the strange path that had brought them to this moment. As dawn began to lighten the sky, painting the room in soft grays and pinks, they'd built something fragile but real between them. Understanding, connection, the foundation of something that might grow into love if they tended it carefully. I should go back to my room before anyone sees me leaving yours, Vanessa said reluctantly as the clock approached 6. Wouldn't want to scandalize the staff. Wouldn't want that, Logan agreed, though he was reluctant to let her go. At the door, Vanessa turned back. Whatever happens at brunch, whatever my family says or doesn't say, I want you to know you've given me something I didn't think I'd ever have. Hope that I can be more than my job, more than my family name, that I can be someone worth knowing for reasons that have nothing to do with my bank account. You've always been worth knowing, Logan said firmly. Your family just didn't give you permission to believe it. She kissed him softly. A promise and a goodbye. And a beginning all rolled into one gesture. Then she slipped out, leaving Logan alone with his thoughts as morning arrived and the final act of their weekend began. Sunday brunch was held on the terrace, a smaller, more intimate affair than the previous night's celebration. Just immediate family, Marcus and Catherine, Alexander and his date, Aunt Catherine, Vanessa, Logan, and Sophie, who'd been allowed to join the adults for this final meal. The food was beautiful, fresh fruit and pastries, made-to-order omelets, freshly squeezed juices, but Logan barely tasted anything, too aware of the undercurrents flowing around the table. Marcus Hale cleared his throat as coffee was served. Logan, before you and Sophie head back to Riverside, I wanted to thank you for joining us this weekend. It's been enlightening to get to know you. The pleasure was mine, sir. Thank you for your hospitality. I also wanted to say, Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. My daughter has seemed more herself this weekend than she has in years, more relaxed, more genuine. Whatever you're doing, it's working. I hope you'll continue doing it. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly, surprised by her father's directness. Dad, let me finish, Nessa. Marcus's tone was gentle. You've spent so long trying to prove yourself, trying to be worthy of the company, the family legacy, all of it. But you've always been worthy. You've always been enough. If it takes someone from outside our world to help you see that, then I'm grateful he came into your life. Catherine Hale nodded in agreement. What your father is trying to say, rather circuitously, is that we approve of Logan, of this relationship, of you choosing happiness over expectation for once. You approve? Vanessa's voice held disbelief. You spent the whole weekend testing him, questioning us, looking for cracks in our story. Of course we did, Aunt Catherine interjected. We wanted to make sure he was genuine, that he wasn't using you for access or money or connections. But watching you two together, seeing the way you look at him when you think no one's watching, the way he prioritizes your comfort over impressing us, it's clear this is real. Whatever it started as, it's real now. Logan felt his throat tighten. The family had seen through their performance to the genuine connection underneath, had recognized what he and Vanessa were only just beginning to acknowledge themselves. Sophie, oblivious to the emotional weight of the conversation, piped up. "Does this mean Miss Vanessa can come visit us? She promised to see my room at home and meet Emma from school." All eyes turned to Vanessa, who looked at Logan with a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly, giving her permission to commit to something that would involve his daughter in whatever they were building. "I would love to visit," Vanessa said warmly to Sophie. "Maybe in a couple of weeks? We could get pizza, and you could show me your favorite places in Riverside." "Really?" Sophie's excitement was palpable. "Can we, Daddy? Can Miss Vanessa come visit?" "Absolutely, baby." Logan's voice was steady, despite the emotion churning in his chest. "Miss Vanessa is always welcome in our home." Alexander raised his coffee cup. "To new beginnings, then. And to my sister finally finding someone who doesn't treat her like a business opportunity." They all drank to that, and the conversation moved on to logistics and schedules and the mundane details of maintaining a long-distance relationship. But beneath the surface, something profound had shifted. Vanessa's family had given their blessing, had seen through the facade to the truth underneath, and had chosen to support it. After brunch, Logan and Sophie packed their things with help from Claire, who'd become genuinely fond of them both over the weekend. Margaret appeared with a basket of treats for the road, cookies and fruit and drinks for Sophie, because even staff who'd seen everything could be charmed by a 7-year-old's enthusiasm. The car waited in the circular drive, Thomas ready to take them home. The family gathered to say goodbye, Catherine hugging Sophie and promising to send books about elephants, Marcus shaking Logan's hand with genuine warmth, Alexander offering a brotherly warning disguised as friendly advice to take care of his sister. Vanessa walked them to the car, her composure perfect but her eyes suspiciously bright. Sophie hugged her enthusiastically. "Thank you for letting us stay in your princess house. It was the best weekend ever." "Thank you for being here, Sophie. You made everything better." Vanessa crouched down to the child's level. "I'll see you soon, okay? In Riverside." "Promise?" "I promise." Sophie climbed into the car, already examining the basket of treats. Thomas moved to give Logan and Vanessa a moment of privacy. "So," Logan said, his hands in his pockets to keep from reaching for her in front of everyone. 2 weeks?" 2 weeks, Vanessa confirmed. "I'll fly down Friday evening. We can have the weekend, if that works for you." "It works." Logan allowed himself a small smile. "Fair warning, my apartment is about the size of your closet here, and Riverside isn't exactly glamorous." "I don't need glamorous, I just need honest." Vanessa's hand found his, squeezing briefly. "Thank you, Logan, for everything. For coming here, for being exactly who you are, for giving this a chance. Thank you for waking me up." Logan squeezed back, then forced himself to let go. "I'll call you this week?" "Please do." The drive back to Riverside felt both endless and too short. Sophie chattered about her weekend adventures while Logan stared out the window, processing everything that had happened. In 72 hours, his entire world had shifted. He'd stepped into a universe of wealth and privilege, discovered that money didn't make people happy, found connection with someone he never should have met, and somehow emerged with both a check that would change his financial situation and the possibility of something that might change his life. The garage looked smaller than he remembered when Thomas pulled up. The apartment above it looked shabby compared to the estate's guest suites, but it was home. Real, solid, his. Thomas helped with the bags, then handed Logan an envelope. "From Miss Hale. She asked me to give this to you privately." Inside was the check, $50,000, as promised, but there was also a note in Vanessa's elegant handwriting. "This was our agreement. The arrangement is fulfilled, the contract complete. What happens next is separate from this transaction." What happens next is just us, choosing each other without money or obligation or performance. "I'm choosing you, Logan Pierce. I hope you'll choose me too. V." Logan stood in front of his garage, check in one hand, note in the other, and felt the last 3 years of careful emotional control crack wide open. He'd built walls after Emily's death, convinced himself that safety and stability were all he needed, that wanting more was selfish when he had Sophie to think about. But Vanessa had walked into his garage with an impossible proposition and somehow showed him that it was okay to want more. That choosing himself didn't mean abandoning his responsibilities as a father. That love, real, complicated, difficult love, was worth the risk of getting hurt again. Sophie appeared in the doorway above the garage. "Daddy, come see. Mr. Elephant missed his regular bed." "Coming, baby." Logan pocketed the check and the note, shouldering their bags. He climbed the stairs to their small apartment, where Sophie was already unpacking, telling Mr. Elephant all about the weekend adventures. Marcus called that evening, listening to Logan's tumbling explanation of feelings and complications and impossible situations. "So what are you going to do?" his friend asked when Logan finally ran out of words. "I'm going to try. I'm going to see if we can build something real from completely artificial beginnings. I'm going to take it slow for Sophie's sake, but I'm not going to let fear stop me from reaching for something that might be amazing." "That's growth, brother. I'm proud of you." Marcus paused. "And if it doesn't work out? If the differences are too much? Then at least I tried. At least I didn't spend the rest of my life wondering what if." Logan looked at Sophie coloring at the kitchen table, completely content. "I owe it to myself. Hell, I owe it to Sophie to show her that taking chances on love is worth the risk." The 2 weeks passed in a blur of normal life infused with new anticipation. Logan deposited the check, paid off the back rent, scheduled Sophie's dental work, bought a few things for the apartment he'd been putting off. But more than the money, he found himself thinking about Vanessa, wondering what she was doing, how her week was going, counting down to Friday evening. They talked every night after Sophie went to bed. Long conversations about everything and nothing, building the foundation of genuine relationship without the pressure of performance. Logan learned about Vanessa's work stress and corporate politics. Vanessa learned about Sophie's school struggles and Logan's ongoing battles with the truck transmission. Friday evening arrived with Logan nervous as a teenager before a first date. He'd cleaned the apartment obsessively, made sure Sophie understood that Miss Vanessa was visiting as a friend first, arranged with Marcus to take Sophie for a few hours Saturday so he and Vanessa could talk privately. Vanessa's rental car pulled up at 7. She emerged in jeans and a simple sweater, casual, approachable. Nothing like the polished CEO who'd first walked into his garage. Logan met her at the bottom of the stairs, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi yourself." Logan reached for her hand, feeling the same electricity he'd felt on the terrace at the estate. "Welcome to my world." "I'm glad to be here." Sophie appeared at the top of the stairs, bouncing with excitement. "Miss Vanessa, you came! You really came!" "I promised, didn't I?" Vanessa climbed the stairs, accepting Sophie's enthusiastic hug with natural ease. "And I never break my promises." The weekend was nothing like the estate. No formal dinners or elaborate events, just simple time together. They ordered pizza and ate on the couch while Sophie told Vanessa about school and her friends. They visited the park where Sophie played while Logan and Vanessa sat on a bench, hands intertwined, talking about everything they hadn't said on the phone. Saturday afternoon, Marcus picked up Sophie for their planned outing. Alone in the small apartment, Logan and Vanessa finally had the conversation they'd been building toward. "This is going to be hard," Vanessa said, curled up beside him on the couch. "The distance, the different lifestyles, figuring out how to blend our worlds. Probably the hardest thing I've attempted since deciding to raise Sophie alone." Logan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I think you're worth it. We're worth it." "I think so too." Vanessa's smile was tentative, hopeful. "I want to take this seriously, Logan. Not rush, not force it, just see where it goes. Can we do that?" "We can do that." Logan kissed her softly, thoroughly, without the pressure of performance or watching families. This kiss was just for them. Honest, searching, full of promise. Over the following months, they built something real. Vanessa visited Riverside twice a month, fitting into Logan's life with surprising ease. She learned to love the diner where they were regulars, befriended Marcus and his wife, charmed Sophie's teachers at parent conferences. She was there for Sophie's dental appointments, for school plays, for quiet Saturday mornings that looked nothing like the life she'd known. And Logan traveled to visit her, less frequently because of Sophie's school schedule, but enough to understand Vanessa's world. He met her colleagues, attended a few work events where he was pleasantly surprised to find he could hold his own in conversations about business and innovation. He learned that wealth didn't automatically mean happiness, that Vanessa's challenges were just as real as his own, even if the scale was different. 6 months after that weekend at the estate, Logan found himself back at the Hale family home for Christmas. But this time there was no performance. This time, he was there as Vanessa's genuine boyfriend, and Sophie was there as part of their developing family unit. Catherine Hale pulled him aside on Christmas Eve, her expression warm. "You know, when Vanessa first told us she'd hired someone to play her boyfriend, I thought she'd lost her mind. But watching you two together now, seeing how happy she is, I'm grateful for whatever insane circumstances brought you into her life." Logan's eyes widened. "She told you?" "Eventually, after it became real. She couldn't keep lying to us." Catherine smiled. "We're not upset. If anything, we're impressed by the honesty, and by the fact that you took something fake and made it genuine." That night, after Sophie was asleep in the guest room that had become hers, Logan and Vanessa stood on the same terrace where they'd first kissed. Snow was falling softly, dusting the gardens in white. "I love you," Logan said, the words coming easily now after months of showing it in actions. "I know we haven't said it yet, but I do. I love you, Vanessa Hale. Not your money, not your family name, not the life you can provide. Just you. The woman who's patient with my daughter, who laughs at my terrible jokes, who falls asleep during movies and refuses to admit it." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. You and Sophie both. You've given me something I didn't know I needed. A real family, genuine connection, the freedom to be imperfect and still be loved. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm grateful every single day that you said yes to my crazy proposition." Logan pulled her close, kissing her while snow fell around them like a benediction. "Best business decision I ever made." A year after that first weekend, they stood in the small garden behind the garage, the one Logan had cleaned up and planted with roses after Vanessa mentioned loving Catherine's garden. Sophie stood beside them in a purple dress, holding a small bouquet, beaming at the gathered crowd of friends and family. The wedding was simple, intimate, nothing like the elaborate society events Vanessa could have had. Marcus served as best man, Catherine as matron of honor. Both families mingled, wealthy Hales in conversation with Logan's military buddies and garage customers, finding common ground in their love for the couple being married. When the minister asked if anyone objected, Sophie piped up, "I object to calling her Miss Vanessa anymore. Can I call her Mom now?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Vanessa, crying openly now, nodded. "I would be honored." The ceremony continued, vows spoken with complete honesty. No performance, no pretending, just two people promising to navigate a complicated life together, to blend their worlds with patience and love, to choose each other every day despite the challenges. When Logan kissed his bride, Sophie cheered loudest of all, understanding in her child's wisdom that happy endings weren't about perfection. They were about choosing love even when it was difficult, about building family from unlikely beginnings, about saying yes to possibilities you never saw coming. The reception was held at Marcus and Catherine Hale's estate, but this time in the gardens, casual and warm. Music played, people danced, and as the sun set over the vineyards, Logan found himself exactly where that first impossible question had led him, surrounded by family, both old and new, married to a woman he never expected to meet, much less love, watching Sophie dance with her grandparents while his best friend made embarrassing toasts. Marcus Hale approached as night fell, handing Logan a glass of champagne. "You know, when Vanessa first told me she was hiring a mechanic to pose as her boyfriend, I thought she'd finally cracked under the pressure. Told her it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard." "And now?" Logan asked, watching Vanessa twirl Sophie across the dance floor. "Now I think it was the smartest thing she's ever done. Sometimes the best things in life come from the craziest ideas." Marcus raised his glass. "To crazy ideas and the courage to say yes." "To saying yes," Logan echoed, drinking to a future he'd built from one impossible question in an oil-stained garage. Later, when the party wound down and Sophie was asleep in Vanessa's childhood bedroom, soon to become their daughter's room during visits, Logan and Vanessa stood in that same terrace where they'd shared so many pivotal moments. "Thank you," Vanessa said quietly, leaning against him, "for taking the risk, for
for seeing past the transaction to the possibility of something real.
For loving me even when I made it difficult. Thank you for walking into my garage that night,
For choosing me out of everyone you could have hired. For showing me that being stuck was a choice, not a permanent condition. Logan wrapped his arms around his wife, the words still new and wonderful. Think we can make this work? The distance, the different worlds, all of it. We've made it work so far. Vanessa turned in his arms, her expression serious but hopeful.
and I think as long as we keep choosing each other, keep being honest, keep building something real instead of performing something perfect, we'll figure it out. One day at a time? One day at a time. They kissed under the stars, two people from impossible backgrounds who'd found connection in the most unlikely circumstances. The weekend that started as performance had become a foundation. The arrangement that was supposed to be temporary had transformed into forever. And in the morning, when Sophie burst into their room demanding pancakes and excited to show Mom her favorite breakfast spot in wine country, Logan realized that the best stories weren't the ones that went according to plan. They were the ones where you said yes to something impossible and discovered it was exactly what you needed all along. $50,000 had changed his financial situation, but Vanessa had changed his life. She'd reminded him that he was more than just a father and a mechanic, that wanting love didn't make him selfish, that taking risks could lead to rewards beyond imagination. As they walked to breakfast, hand in hand, Sophie between them chattering about the wedding and the dancing and how she was going to tell Emma about having a mom now, Logan felt complete in a way he hadn't since Emily's death. Not because Vanessa had replaced what he lost, but because she'd shown him there was room in his heart for both grief and new love, for honoring the past while building a future. The story that began with a desperate question in a garage had led him here, to a family that fit together despite not making sense on paper, to love that was worth every complication it brought, to a life bigger and richer and more full than he'd dared imagine in 3 years of playing it safe. Sometimes the universe spoke through impossible propositions from strangers. Sometimes it spoke through 7-year-olds who saw sadness and suggested friendship. Sometimes it spoke through your own willingness to say yes when every logical thought screamed no. Logan Pierce had listened. He'd said yes. And in doing so, he'd found everything he'd stopped believing he deserved: partnership, passion, purpose beyond mere survival. The weekend had ended long ago, but the story it started was just beginning, unfolding one honest moment at a time, built on a foundation of truth that emerged from fiction, sustained by love that was worth every risk they'd taken to find it. And that, Logan thought as Sophie grabbed both their hands to swing between them, was the real happy ending. Not perfection, but presence. Not certainty, but choice. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A real life, genuinely lived, with people who saw you completely and loved you anyway. The rest would figure itself out. They'd navigate the challenges as they came, together, always together. Because some questions changed everything, and the best answer was always yes.